Good morning and welcome, native atheists. I can talk, I swear, and of course, anyone who is watching, or who is lurking in the chat and or watching in the future. So this week, given the current, or rather. Is the cricket discourse still going on, or did it just kind of die
down? They I don't know. I'm pretty sure they found something else to get wound up about this week. But yeah, I think it was reporting to English cricket which sort of triggered the interest in this a little bit.
Yeah,
even though this film's nothing to do with cricket, well, not so much anyway. It's so.
Yeah, given the the Tories and other white middle class people bitching about other ethnicities playing the game that the British Empire forced on them. We figured we'd pause the What We Miss Catch-Up month for to cover Bend It Like Beckham.
I love how you nearly said bend over there.
I can talk, I swear.
No, I promise we have watched the actual movie, not the porno ripoff.
Can I make an apology in advance right now to everyone else in the stream and anyone watching? If I start doing Indian accents in this, I'm not trying to be offensive. It's just that sometimes some of the jokes in this you have
to be told in an Indian accent.
And I'm also going to apologise, not just for doing an Indian accent, but probably butchering it as I do it.
Oh God, don't worry. Like, I grew up surrounded by Indian accents. I can't do an Indian accent anymore. But some of these jokes, like, I don't hear them in the voice of the actors. I hear them in the voice of my aunties or my uncles.
Yeah.
Sometimes my mum.
I'm just getting that out of the way. I'm not being racist.
I'm jumping off that to give my apology because my mum was half Indian, half Jamaican. So it was perfectly normal in my family to start off a sentence in an English accent, do the middle in Indian, and by the end be in full patois. So if I do that, I'm not taking the piss, I promise.
Yeah.
Like, you full on, like, you start off sounding like the Queen, you end up sounding like the mother in this movie in the middle, and then by the end you sound like Bob Marley or some shit. Perfectly normal.
So, it's just a disclaimer. We are not being racist. Let's get that out of the way now.
And disclaimer, a lot of the stuff in this movie it's made me not nostalgic, but it's very familiar to me growing up part Indian in that culture. So yeah, a lot of things to say on it.
Also, it is very early 2000s.
It is very early 2000s. Also her name's Jasminda. Like, it's not difficult to pronounce, white people. Like, just learn it.
Now, before we get into the new segment that we started doing regularly last week, I do have to say that, like, I do have to give, like, give a tip of the hats off to Fox Studios for having its Searchlight Pictures program.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure other studios have something like it, because if they don't, then they're morons. But until Fox was absorbed into the all-consuming glob that is the Disney media, or the Fox movie studio was absorbed into the all-consuming blob that is the Disney media empire. it had its Fox Searchlight Studios where they would take it, where they would find indie filmmakers, give them the money to produce, like let them make their movie and then handle all the distribution costs for them.
Yeah.
This is where,
also,
yeah.
Go on.
So this is where we got. What?
Keep going.
Okay. So this is where we got movies like, Bend Like Beckham, where we got, or Napoleon Dynamite is actually the most famous Fox Searchlight standout. It's also where we got the recent movie Chevalier, which, if you haven't streamed it, you should. And unfortunately, most, like the last movies that Fox made are, before Disney absorbed them, aren't being really given much of a theatrical release because Disney either can't profit from distributing it or they outright don't have the distribution rights. So they're just kind of barely given a theatrical release or just released onto streaming. Something capitalist hellscape.
Yeah. Chevalier, great film, but we're not here to talk about that. So let's dive straight into Bend It Like Beckham. Do we want to do the Christian review first?
Yes, I figured that it's best for Media Musings proper to be a palate cleanser.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I did take a. I am the only one in the panel that
Just put it up on screen and let us.
Yeah.
Know.
Okay. We are starting a little bit into the positive elements section because it is a long review. Is all I was really. There it is.
Just before you say that, don't mind me eating, folks. It's 2:00 in the afternoon, and this is technically my breakfast.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a little bit into the positive elements.
Are you going to make me choke?
Bending the rules doesn't get just what she wants. It's her father's unconditional love for her that finally prompts him to set aside his own likes and dislikes to make room for her dreams. Just knows that full well. So when her coach calls his own father a bastard, she replies, "You shouldn't say that about your dad." She also heard defending her parents saying, "They want to protect me. Soccer is taking me away from everything they know."
Of course, Plugged In would like that.
Racism is condemned, as is a victim's bitterness about being on the receiving end of it.
Oh, tell me you didn't understand the movie without telling me you didn't understand the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on that. Okay.
Yeah. Years later, he realizes his vengeful attitude only hurt himself, not the ones who abused him. Teamwork and hard work also get healthy.
His attitude wasn't vengeful. His attitude was acceptance.
Yeah. Spiritual content. Just as family prays to what appears to be an Indian deity.
No shit.
Noodle, do you want to respond to that?
It's not a deity. It's a religious leader. There is a difference.
Yeah.
I was not raised in the religion they're raised in. They're Sikh. But it's not a deity. Sikhs do not deify their religious leaders. They leave that up to the Christians.
Wouldn't it be like, it wouldn't be a 1-to-1 comparison, but it's like they're gonna scoff their nose, like, these people, yet Catholics, like fucking have pictures of the Pope and like they go visit the Pope.
That's almost what it is.
Like Plugged In is run by Focus on the Family. They hate on the Catholics for that too.
Yes, but the thing is, Catholics don't venerate the popes either. The popes are there as a look. The Sikhs, the way they talk about their gurus. Again, I don't have a lot of understanding. My family were Hindu, but I don't even know much about that religion because I wasn't raised into it. But they don't venerate. They don't. They don't treat their leaders like they're not they're not like made into saints. They're not deified, but they are respected and they are like it's again there's no one-to-one comparison with a monotheist religion. Sikhism is not monotheistic, I don't think. And
all I know about Sikhism is that it was born out of like a fusion of Hinduism and Islam.
Okay.
Yeah, basically very similar with a few Buddhist influences in there as well.
Now, I just want to say something very quickly here, as someone who does some atheist videos on YouTube. There's kind of if this Christians think I'm picking on them a bit at times. It's kind of like because I don't know a lot about Sikhism. I don't really know the first thing about it. I don't know that much about Islam. If I'm going to go after a religion, it's going to be. I'm not going to do it in a way that's completely fucking uninformed. So
do you know what?
Also,
at the end of the day,
take notes.
Can I just as a point, as someone raised Catholic, at the end of the day, yes, I'm going to go after Christianity and Catholicism because no Muslim teacher, no Sikh teacher, no, any other religious teacher told me I was going to hell at 8 years old, told me that, I deserved to be beaten, and told me that if I'd been in school 10 years earlier, I'd have got the rod for talking back. So, can we... People react to what they know.
Like,
if you want to go, I am sure there is a fantastic culture somewhere of ex-Muslims and ex-Sikhs on YouTube or some social media having those discussions. Go find them. They know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
Also, the Sikhs are badasses.
Yeah. Like they literally, it's part of their religious dress to carry a little ceremonial knife. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So another reason I don't really want to piss the Sikhs off.
Yeah, so now on to we're just gonna breeze through the highlights. Nudity and sexual content. Beckham's most positive theme, finding one's niche and pursuing goals with gusto, introduces its highest hurdle, homosexuality.
Da, da, da.
Tony casually informs her that he's gay. Jess is cool with Tony's lifestyle choices, and moviegoers are expected to follow her lead.
Okay, can I point something out? This was 2002. Moviegoers were absolutely not expected to be following her lead.
Yeah.
Like, if you were supportive, yes, but that ain't like that was the first time. Like I saw this movie when I was 10. I genuinely was getting into arguments with school teachers at 14 and 15 about this movie who claimed that he wasn't saying he was gay in that scene. So don't tell me, do not tell me that this movie was trying to lead audiences down the garden path, because audiences are fucking stupid, especially when they don't want to see something.
Shag is used to denote sexual acts.
Yes, that's British slang. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to highlight the crude or profane language because there is something noticeably missing from its discussion of crude or profane language.
I've got a feeling. I'm not going to say it, but I've got a feeling I know what the fucking word. I've got a feeling I know the exact word that's going to be missing from this. Yeah.
Jesus' name is abused a handful of times. The S word is uttered 4 times. Coarse British terms such as shag, bloody, censored
Wanker
wanker
and
and
bollocks.
censored bollocks are trotted out and bleeped and a bleeped F word crops up during the credits.
Okay, can I just point something out? Joey's Irish. He says Jesus the way the rest of us say fuck. That's normal. He's Irish Catholic. Jesus is just his go-to curse word.
Yeah, funny how they didn't mention the slurs.
Yeah, it's funny how, mentioning the racial slurs and the homophobic slurs is not put in the crude or profane language section.
Yeah.
Then again, they were said so casually, and I said so casually in British culture. Maybe they didn't realize the words were meant to be slurs.
Yeah.
No, because like even as an American,
even as an American, like
the D slur is the same here, and the P slur,
yes. I mean, I only just feel comfortable saying the word dyke because I fall under the queer umbrella, but I understand that is the lesbian's word.
I'm a bisexual, and I tend not to even use it, even though I could.
Oh no. It's like I regularly, when I was in school, people would call me a dyke, and I was just like, "Are you stupid?" It's like I was outed as bisexual at school, and people would call me a dyke, and just like, "Are you stupid? Do you know what words mean?"
But let's see.
Hang on, no, go back up. I want to see the bit. Go back up. Yeah. I want to see this drug and alcohol content. Okay. Bearing in mind that one of the main characters is Catholic Irish.
Yeah, the girls' coach works at a pub. Some of the soccer players drink alcohol at clubs and restaurants. Jess isn't seen drinking, but at one point she staggers out of a German club looking intoxicated. She had a wine glass in her hand. She blames the dense cigarette smoke inside. Jess and Jules' parents drink wine. Jules' father smokes.
Okay, but Jess had a wine glass in her hand in that nightclub scene.
Yeah.
She was drinking white wine.
Oh, no. No. Booze and cigarettes in movies.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Booze and cigarettes in a movie about 18-year-olds.
Sorry, I was almost
legally able to drink, because in the United States, we are like one of the only countries in the world that the drinking age is 21. Like everywhere else is 18 or younger.
Sorry, I had to stop myself then, because I very nearly said a British slang word for cigarettes that could be taken the wrong way. So.
And this is, of course, my reminder to everyone who is watching, plugged in, while masquerading as a review service, it is actually a parent censorship guide.
There was absolutely nothing wrong with this film. Other than obviously some slurs tossed in there and some just ignorance in a few spots, but considering the time period it was made,
a little bit of casual racism for some of the characters, but but that's kind of the point of the characters in a sense.
No, and it's very familiar to anyone who's actually British. But the thing is, something I've just realized about this film: you never see Joe with a drink in his hand. For himself. You never see him drink. There's one shot of him holding a beer bottle, but you never see him actually drink. That's really important, because the actor who plays Joe has been very open about it, has struggled with alcoholism for most of his life. And I think it's a nice thing that they didn't even ask him to fake it. Because he works in a bar. The idea of the landlord sat doing the books without a pint next to him, I've just realised how weird that is.
Yeah.
But it's there. And again, kudos to the makers for that one.
Yeah. Despite the largely positive resolution of the matter, Jess's disobedience is encouraged by her friends and coach. Both Jules and Jess's sister help her deceive her parents, going so far as to lie for her. As much of a stretch for the sister, who is carrying on a clandestine sexual relationship with her fiancé. Oh, okay, here's where we have racial slurs. Characters voice racial slurs, but the film firmly condemns racism and prejudice. So they
Can
put
I
it
point
in
out, Jerry's
other
is not a
negative
racial
elements.
Look, can I point something out? Okay, in British culture, like I know it started out as a racial slur against the Germans in the Second World War, but Jerry's in the UK is not. It doesn't carry that bite anymore, especially from like the Irish who were on the side of the Germans, because they hated the English. So coming from an Irish person, that's not like if you've ever like if you know any Irish people, the way they talk, there's a lot of slang in their language and stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean they're slinging slurs around.
And
that's just completely culturally stupid.
I'd hate to like sort of suggest that all slurs aren't created equal, but I think there's a big difference in connotation between Jerry's and the other words.
Yeah.
The other words, which I'm not going to say.
So I can't believe I'm saying this, but I apologize. Focus on the family. You did note the racial slur issue, but I don't know why you put it in other elements instead of crude or profane language.
Yeah, that's
and also buried near the end of the other negative elements.
I do feel like that's very telling about what Focus on the Family actually cares about, and clearly racial equality isn't one of those things.
Yeah. So, and from the end of the conclusion, just as on the cusp of independence, so how she should interact with her family isn't as clear cut as it would be if she were 12. That just makes the film all the more thought-provoking. This is the kind of nuanced script that can spawn healthy and hearty conversations between teens and parents about the gradual process of apron string cutting, mutual respect, obedience, exasperation, and support for both tradition and forward thinking. But bend it like Beckham's embrace of homosexual ideals, particularly as they apply to teens, should make families wary. The value of one good chat about a parent-teen relationships is deeply undermined if the side effect is a subtle growing acceptance of alternative lifestyles.
It's always the but. Like they had me at that first bit of, a nuanced conversation about apron string cutting and how a relationship between a child and parent might shift and change as they come of age and embark on their own. Like that was fine. I was like, finally, something I can agree with in this. And then they ruined it.
Yeah, because it's not a review service. It's a censorship guide.
Okay, right. Few things you have to understand. This was 2002, 2003. This movie came out and was made. Right? Like this movie was made so early that it got in before all the extra security after 9/11 kicked the British airports. Because that didn't really start coming in until like 2003, 2004 in the UK, like the massive security changes. So the airport at the end of the scene is what airports in the UK look like before 9/11.
Yeah, and they started.
And it's not that it's not that's because it was filmed before 9/11. It's because the UK didn't have that immediate visceral gut reaction that America had, and it took a bit longer to implement those changes.
I mean, to be fair, like the attack happened here and not there. Like the first time I ever flew on a plane was November of 2001. I was being terrified. Because I flew up to Massachusetts to visit family for Thanksgiving. Like I had my ID and I chewed the corner off like in my nerves.
I'll tell you a story then. 2002, I flew. Last time I went to the United States, I flew to the United States, and with a number of American Civil War reenactors, and there were guns in the cargo hold. Now, obviously, we had to go through. You'd expect quite a bit of paperwork and security to take guns in the hold. For obvious reasons. But I'd say the next time I flew anywhere, and I was not, and it had nothing to do with, I was just going for a friend's stag do. The security was a lot worse, and I'll tell you that, and I can tell you the exact date we flew out, the 8th of January, 8th of July 2005.
Fucking hell, the day after the London bombings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fucking hell, no wonder security were tight.
Yeah, that was yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I can tell you most fun I had at the airport there. It was flying out from Stansted. Then yeah, that was
like British
tense.
airports before 9/11 and really before the war on terror, because it didn't really hit, like, things changed and the politics started to change, but the real change was, like, for us, it was after Tony Blair followed Bush into Iraq. That's when things changed in the UK.
Yeah.
Until then, it was, yes, these things happened in America, but that's America, that's not Britain. And, you know, we have this massive Asian population in Britain. Like, there was some flash, but it wasn't, you know, this is pre-Twitter. This is probably pre-Facebook. Yeah.
Oh, it was.
Like,
it was.
MySpace was the social media du jour in this era. Maybe even earlier than that. Maybe even Friendster. So, like, we didn't have that cultural enmeshment that we've got now.
I think, like, MySpace might have just been getting started then,
and that's if you were rich enough to have internet.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, not necessarily rich enough to
DSL
have internet.
was
Like,
just
my
like starting to show up, like, in the early 2000s. Like,
so I was in school at this time, and it was generally expected that in school at this time you had the facility to print at home, which meant that you were expected to have at least one computer in the house. But it was still perfectly normal for me to do my homework at home, put it on a floppy disk, and take it to school to print off in the school library.
I don't even think I got an email address of my own until 2006, because I didn't need.
I had a Hotmail email address in 2001.
Yeah,
I just full-on original Hotmail email address.
And it was essentially, I only got one because I had no need of it. And then all of a sudden, I had a need of it. So.
Oh, you know, I only needed it for school. Like, I never used my email address for anything but school until I was about 15.
But
anyway,
we had, like, my parents my dad was always very, like, if the latest tech came out, my dad had it. It was one of those people. Like, I remember in 2002, I still had a video player in my bedroom. And a little Asda TV, like the big black boxes.
And I know I'm officially old now, because I'm going to actually tell you that when I say my first email address was an AOL address, and people were going to go, what? And now I'm like, now I'm officially old.
Mine was from Time Warner, because Time Warner was the cable company.
Well, didn't they become part of AOL?
Do you remember the old computer towers? Do you remember they had the little square on them that you could put a sticker on? The family computer at my parents' house, the first computer that they built for me to do my homework on, that my dad had done, I got a little Charmander sticker to put in that little square. My dad got it free at CCL. Damn. Like, that's how far back, like... Yeah, like full-on dial-up. Like, we even, you know those speakers that used to crackle when your mobile phone was about to ring, and your mobile phone was a Nokia with a black and white screen. Like, that's the era we're talking about here, folks.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm having my first Uncle Albert moment here.
Like, I can actively feel
during the war.
Yeah, no, but I can actually feel the hairs on my head turning grey.
Yeah. So and honestly, sometime we should do a stream just like deconstructing how Plugged In approaches its guide to censorship. But that's not the purpose of this stream. The purpose of this stream is to talk about Bendit Like Beckham.
Yeah. So let's do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So opens up and she's clearly daydreaming about a football match in which she's playing. Like Manchester United at this time were the top tier team. Like they were the biggest team in the league by a mile. Like the next biggest team was probably Chelsea.
In the world at this time.
Yeah.
Like the only team I know the name of.
Yeah, no, your top teams you had Man U, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Arsenal. Those were your top 4 teams.
And Liverpool. I know Liverpool and Manchester United. Those are the only 2 football teams that I know of.
Yeah. You know those 2 because those 2 used to fight the War of the Roses every year in the frigging Premier League. It was the thing.
This was the thing back then. Even if you had no idea about, if you're from another country, another culture, you know nothing about soccer, football, you know who Manchester United are, and to be saying that, you probably have heard of David Beckham as well.
Yeah, you knew who David Beckham was. David Beckham, number 7, Man United shirt.
Yeah, and Beckham. I'll just get this out. Look, he was a brilliant player, but I don't think he's like one of the all-time greats. But Beckham was a brand. He's one of the first footballers I saw that was a brand. He was a brand, that man.
He also got married to
Lineker had come along a few. I think if Lineker had come along a few years later, he'd have been a brand as well, and a brand whose entire brand wasn't eating crisps.
So,
Gary Lineker is the face of Walker's crisps in the UK.
And, it opens up on,
speaking of Gary Lineker,
on the inside, within this daydream where the sports commentators are talking about, just how good Jess is, and she's not even at her peak, and then we get the bit that really tells the audience that this is a daydream because we're in media res, for it. And it's like her mom's in the studio with us, and then
I got it. It was a good segue because Noodle mentioned Gary Lineker there, and we saw Gary Lineker. Okay, Alan Hansen, who's an ex-Scottish footballer who's became a pundit, and then John Barnes. And I'll just say, in the 1980s, Gary Lineker and John Barnes were like superstars as football players. And John Barnes, I'll say this, one of the first really black superstars of British football.
Yes. Who's that famous American basketball player? Jordan, yeah. If you want to talk about level of absolute stardom in their sport, Gary Lineker, those 3 guys and Beckham, that's the level of stardom we're talking about here. Every kid knew who they were. Every kid knew their stats.
Not so much Alan Hansen, but John Barnes and Gary Lineker definitely.
Every kid knew their number.
Yeah, for the fellow Yanks watching, we're talking Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal levels of fame.
Kobe.
Superstardom, yeah. Beckham literally couldn't walk down the street in Britain without being mobbed at one point. And you've got the mother who sits there. No, I'm not proud of her. She's bringing shame on the family.
Yeah.
You can hear the accent coming out already, can't you? That's because I can hear my own aunties. You bring shame on the family. And then it would descend into Jamaican cussing because, of course, it would. In my family, at least. But it's a really, really good segue because Like, that's the thing, right? That's the thing about this. It's a very culturally early 2000s Indian family in England movie, but it's also like every 17, 18-year-old knows what it's like, where, you know, your parents are trying to guilt you into still acting like a kid, and you're trying to grow up and cut the apron strings. They don't want to let you do it. So in that way, it's a very universal story. And come on, let's be honest, most of us, if we were in that position where we were doing something excellent, because to be playing on the same pitch as those players, Scholes and Beckham and the rest of them, and Giggs at that age for Man U, that's excellence. That's up there. And we absolutely, all of us have got that one parent or that one auntie or uncle who, you know, the media would go and find, who would absolutely embarrass the fuck out of you by making comments like that.
Yeah.
Like my mother, like, it became a thing in my family. It still is a thing in my family. Like, I grew up during the teenage years, you know. No man's gonna want a woman who can't cook. No man's gonna want a woman who can sit around reading books all day but can't make round chapati. That's what my mother used to say to me. Yeah. And to the point, I've watched my own cousins who are about the same age as me now and have got like 5 and 6 year olds saying to their kids, you know, no family wants a daughter-in-law who can run around playing games all day but can't make round chapati, can't fold a samosa, can't cook curry. Like, you know, this became a cultural thing, and especially my family really adopted it as, this is one of our stories, these are our people. Just a shame they didn't actually learn the lesson of the movie, which is you have to let your kids live their own lives, but it's a different kettle of fish. This movie, like, if I tell you that the 2 biggest movies in my family were East is East and Bend It Like Beckham. And we need to do East is East on Media Musings at some point. We just do.
Yeah.
Because that's Indian families. East is East is based in the north as well. But yeah. And the mother she's so in character that there are actively things she says that make me remember conversations with family. And like, absolutely, Jessie's like, her parents will let her have a love match. I was 14, 15, and, you know, but my parents were never going to force me to marry an Indian or marry a Jamaican. But the joke started being passed by the time I was 14, 15 of, so when you were arranging a marriage and, you know, can so-and-so buy you for a camel and 2 bags of rice? You know, those jokes were being passed. That was the culture. And, you know, my dad always used to, my dad white, but my dad always used to respond with, you know, she's educated. You know, one man we were in a pub said, yeah, I'll have her off you for 2 camels. And my dad came out there and went, you know, she's educated. You know, she's going off to uni, because I was only about 17. She's going to uni. And the guy came back and went, okay, 2 camels and a donkey. And like, that was taken as a joke. That was just the cultural, that was the joke. But the joke really spoke to something deeper of, you don't let your daughters actually live their own lives. And that's what a lot of this movie is about. Like, the Indian culture of really forcing the daughters into a mold. And unfortunately, even though I'm 3rd generation removed from India, that still, like, my cousins are beginning to break that mold with their kids. And it is just a joke with their kids. But there's still a little bit of bite to it. Like, there's still some bitterness there. So it's a really, what was most shocking about this movie to me is that someone showed what real Indians talk like and behave like. And for those that don't know, the director of this movie is Indian. She also directed Bride and Prejudice, which is the Indian Bollywood version of Pride and Prejudice, which is a fantastic movie. You should go watch that too.
Yeah. And like I fully expect you to take the lead on most of the conversation this week because
Yeah, because
like
I'm the half Indian raised
Yeah.
in Britain.
I'm gonna say I might be the only other Brit in the stream, but there's gonna be sort of cultural things even in this film that I'm not gonna really understand as well. So because I don't have the experience of it.
So what do you think? Thematic or linear?
Let's go linear for this one.
Okay.
I think linear will work for this one.
But another good thing about how the film opens is it gives us the conflict of the film in a very very succinct and humorous bite-sized. It's like, this is what the film is. Enjoy. Because the entire conflict, the main conflict of the film is the pull between Western, or rather Anglo culture and traditional Anglo culture represented by the soccer team and
but
versus the traditional holding on to the home culture, even the pretty toxic bits.
But even in a way, though, it's also there's a strange, even though it's not at the same level, there's a strange mirror going on between the two of the main characters, like Keira Knightley's character and Jess. That with like Keira Knightley's character, is it Julie? I've forgotten the name. Where it's Julia or something. Juliet. Is that right?
Juliet or Jules for short.
Jules, sure. Jules. Like the way the relationship she has with her mother. And it's kind of like, there's a sort of, girls should be playing sports, There's it's a weird. So there's a similar thing going on there, but even if it's not anywhere at the same level as what Jess is having to deal with.
Well, I mean, we're introduced to Jules when she's going bra shopping with her mom, and her mom is trying to get her to pick out bras with inserts, so she'll get catch the eyes of the boys.
You pump these ones up, sort of. It's embarrassing the hell out of her daughter in that shop.
Yeah. And
well, this is the thing, right? This is what this movie does really well, is it shows the similarities between cultures.
Yeah.
Like, both of these girls have parents who are coming at it from very different points of view. Right? You've got Indian traditional family, and then you've got very Middle England, white English parents on Jules's side. You know, the mother owns a hat that wouldn't be out of place at Ascot. That tells me straight away she's a very Hyacinth Bucket. Almost. Like that's what
she's a cross between she's sort of half Hyacinth and half Marlene from Only Fools and Horses. She's got that slight Marlene thing going on there as well.
She is. She's a working class lass who thinks she's a bit more than working class. Like, that's exactly who she is. But in the end, you notice that these parents have very similar concerns, right? They worry about their daughter's safety. They worry their daughter will be treated badly by the community. They worry about their daughter's future, her happiness, her education. You know, how is she going to live a life? And it's very telling that, like, the set dressing's different, but if you take it all away, they're the same underneath.
And, you know, they both have their own, you know, their own kinds of bigotry.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily bigotry, it's ignorance. Because, and just to clarify, when I say that, when I talk about bigotry, how I understand the word bigotry is deliberately malicious. Whereas ignorance, you can be bigoted in your ignorance, but that doesn't make you a bigot. That just makes you ignorant. And there is a difference. Like these people are not bigots; they are ignorant. There is a difference.
I think when it's like willful ignorance, that's when you step into bigotry.
Yeah, and like it's not willful ignorance with these people. It's just the fact that, look, cultures don't mix in Britain. They don't, okay? Like, Scummer, serious question. How many, in your day-to-day life, like where your local pub or wherever, how many Indians drink there? Or how many Jamaicans drink there?
Oh, hold on. My local pub, I don't know. I think there might be like 2 or 3 people of colour, possibly, that I see on a semi-regular basis. But I mean, look, my local is white, sort of petty bourgeois, sort of village pub as there is, you know, my local.
Yeah, like the point I'm making, my uncle, half Indian, half Jamaican, used to run pubs in Bradford. And it was not unusual for us to walk into that pub and for my dad to be the only white person there. Cultures do not mix in Britain. There's no formal apartheid, but there is a little bit of a cultural one. Like,
well, I mean,
there's not a lot of mixing.
There's a sort of unspoken.
I would say that Jules' mother has a bit of, you know, also, you know, it is a bit of a bigot, but we're going to put a pin in that because
I do want to say that I do want to clarify what I've just said and what Scummer and I have just discussed. When we say there's a bit of an unspoken, we don't mix, we don't mean what that Nigel Farage says. There's certain places white people can't go. It's just that's not what that means.
People just tend to naturally congregate with their own. With their own people.
America has Chinatown and Jewish quarters and whatever else you have.
Down the street from me, there's like little Vietnam where it's full of like Vietnamese restaurants and Asian markets and stuff. Now, one thing I was looking more into the actors for this film real quick. And something just blew my mind. I want to bring it up. Parminder Nagra, like the actress who played Jess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is 10 years older than Keira Knightley. Keira Knightley and I are 15 months apart. We're a year apart. She is 47 years old. She was born in Leicester, England in 1975. She was 10 years older than Keira Knightley.
She's older than me, yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, no,
what?
Jess is a very, like, she was a lot older, but she played really young. And this is the thing, like, you have to realize with Indian girls, I say girls, we're not girls, we're women. We can play really young. And I say we because I can do it. Like, I can make myself look 19. I can also make myself look 45 with a little bit of makeup and a change of hairstyle.
I mean,
it's just one of those things where just really not.
I mean, things have changed in the respect because, I mean, before, I mean, you know, Noodle they know their history. You'll back me up on this, but you know, you can tell you back in like the 50s, 60s, and maybe even into the 70s, before government finally put a stop to this. there were literally pubs that would have a sign outside. It would say this:
Yeah.
no dogs, no blacks, no Irish.
Yeah.
I'm not
and
joking.
that was a
you
thing.
see that.
Yeah,
that was a
that
thing
was the
that
sign.
you'd see.
And there's still certain pubs that you go into, and they can't say that explicitly anymore. But if you go into a pub, you might find that it's a bit difficult for you to get served a drink, or people don't talk to you, because of that.
Well, you might get served, but you won't. You might get served through gritted teeth, but it'd be like. I think it'd be made subtle. It won't. Like I said, it'd be unspoken, but it'll be made somewhat clear to you that you're not really welcome here.
Yeah, you're not welcome here. You're not one of us. Like, if you want to just sit in the corner, listen to the music, and watch the football on the TV with your pint, fine. But do not think you are one of us. Is very much how that would be laid out. I mean, Ring's seen it. Ring's been to Bradford. Like, when Ring was here, we went out sometimes, and obviously I move in the Jamaican community in Bradford and the Jamaican Indian community in Bradford. Ring saw it. Like, there were times when we'd go out and Ring would be sat there and no one had talked to Ring for over an hour. And I'd just be sat there and I'd have to, the number of times, and I'll tell you now, Ring, because, I would literally turn to my cousin, who's about Ring's age, and would literally go over and talk to him, will you? Don't leave him on his pod. Go over and talk to him for me. Because my cousin known in the culture, so if my cousin talks to him, other people talk to him. But you have to break that barrier down.
And it doesn't exactly help that I'm not the most outgoing person.
You're not, but even still, leaving you to sit on your own at a black person's wake for over an hour is not right. And it is one of those things of, you are not one of us, therefore we are not. You have to make the effort. You have to go out of your way to break down that barrier. And it's not just Jamaicans that do it. That's just my experience. But
I say
it is very much a.
I mean, like you mentioned the dickhead's name earlier, Farage. And his ilk. These are the kind of people who always talk about they don't integrate. I want to say something.
Yes.
Integration works both ways here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's on. It's not on people of other cultures to integrate. We've got to also be willing. It's like white English people. We've got to be willing to integrate with communities as well. If you talk about integration, that has to work both ways.
Do you know what it is? We've come all the way to your front door and landed on your shores. The least you could fucking do is unlock it. That's the attitude. It's like, and if you're not going to unlock it, we'll just throw a party out here on the porch. We don't give a shit. Like that's the attitude.
They're like, oh, we want the spices, and we'll take things like curry and claim we invented it. But then,
I mentioned. I mean,
mingle.
I don't know if it was on a stream or when we spoke recently, Noodle, about, because I'm from a city in south of England, but there's quite a large Eastern European, mainly Polish community, and there are a whole number of Polish shops, and I've heard like white English people saying, well, if you're English, you don't even get served in those shops, and I'm like,
well,
have you actually ever been Polish? Have you actually ever been into one of them and tried to get served? I have. I have not. They don't turn business away. They're only too happy to serve me, and I don't know a single fucking word of Polish. Okay, so, and as I say, look, quite frankly, I'm much happier with this like a little local Polish food shop and Polish food stop than I am another bloody Tesco's Express or a Sainsbury's local that's this horribly big corporate, I mean, let's just say like a Tesco Express for the Americans, that'd be like, I don't know, a 7-Eleven type of thing, that like that.
Yeah.
Something like 7-Eleven,
it's like
Circle K, something like that.
Americans have like bodega shops, I think you call them. Like it's like
That's
that.
more
That's
like
what the
in New
Polish shops are
York
like.
and up north, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's the sort of shop.
But really,
but like as well, like. Go on.
No, really, you see, when we're talking about they don't want to integrate, what we're really saying is they don't want to assimilate.
Yes.
It just sounds nicer when we say integrate.
Okay, so
Yes.
I moved to add a second channel punching bag. Like because we have like for the Barbie, the Joanne, like we should have a male Ken counterpart. Can we make Nigel Farage like the male punching bag?
Oh, what? You mean a dickless wonder who thinks he's some kind of man and isn't? Absolutely, that's Nigel Farage.
Maybe.
Unfortunately, Farage doesn't have as much of a,
international.
Well, also Farage doesn't have as much of a
bank account.
A cultural, a pop cultural impact.
Then we'll group him in with Piers Morgan.
But
twofer.
So the reason why JK has become the channel punching bag is because in the early days of Media Musings, we kept drawing on Harry Potter as a counterexample.
Yeah. Literally, it was, yeah. But like the thing is with, Nigel Farage doesn't have a bank account, Dickless Wonder, so we can't make him a Ken doll because Ken at least had money. But yeah, it's one of those things because like you cannot say to us, come to this country, integrate, and then when we get here say, but integration means leaving everything. Like there's a comment that white racists in Britain like to say. They say, if you don't like it here, go back. You came here for a reason. But like we came here for one reason. That doesn't mean we want to completely disavow everything we are in order to eat fish and chips and cause fights at football matches.
Like the parallel would be the residential schools like in Canada and the US where it's like, oh, we're going to take these children and we want to strip them of their cultural heritage and make them basically just melanated white people.
And I quote, kill the Indian, save the man.
Yeah. But I could.
And I feel disgusting.
I have stories. Like, I went to Catholic school in Britain, right? I've got pictures of me in primary school where I was the only non-white child in that classroom. And because it was the Catholics and, there's a massive Muslim population in Bradford, so that's where most of the other non-white kids were. But where I was the only non-white child, and I could tell you stories about the way teachers treated me that would make your hair curl. Like, if I told you these stories and you had that teacher in front of you, I fully expect that one of you would swing for that teacher even that many years later. Because that was normalized to me. I complained once in primary school about a boy who passed a comment to me that I was what was it? That I was dark and exotic. I was 10 years old. And do you know what the teacher said to me when I complained? Oh, he means it as a compliment, just leave it. The same boy had been feeling me up and I'd been sat next to him because he was a trouble kid and I was one of the good kids. I'd been sat next to him to make him behave. He'd been feeling me up for 3 days. Eventually, when I twatted him in the classroom, knocked him off his chair, the teacher put me in detention for a week and rang my mother. My mother came up to the school, and when my mother found out which boy it was I'd punched, my mother told the teacher, get the fuck out my face before you get the same.
There's a word. There's a word that doesn't get used enough these days. Twatted him. Yeah. There's a word that we don't use enough these days.
So
it's still in use up north, but yeah, I thought like knock the kid off his chair. And my mother came up to the school, and when she found out which boy it was, because she knew the boy had been like harassing me and stuff, my mother found out and said, "Yeah, What did you say my daughter was in trouble for? Oh, yeah, for hitting him back. Okay. Fuck out my face before I knock your block off and all. You know.
So
And my mum was really good because my mum could turn the Jamaican or the Indian accent on and off like a switch. She was really good at code switching. And the number of times I'd get into trouble at school, you know, and when I was in the wrong, my mum suddenly didn't speak English. She was Indian and she didn't speak English. Or when my mum was annoyed at them, she was suddenly Jamaican. And, you know, she was always really good with that. It wasn't often I was in the wrong in my defense. Like, I say that, but it wasn't often I was in the wrong and she knew it. But yeah, going back to this, right? Because, again, having now brought it back around to discussions of mothers and the cultural differences, right?
Yeah.
Your family always wants what they think is best for you. The problem with, especially immigrant cultures, and I'm so glad they put this comment in Joe's mouth, your family don't always know what's best. Because what's best for you if your family was still in India is not what's best for you in friggin' is Hounslow North London?
Yeah, sort of northwest London,
north-ish.
sort of.
Yeah,
It's sort of
London.
If I were to guess,
it's sort of a northwest suburb of London. Yeah.
Yeah, if I were to guess, it's somewhere near Heathrow Airport. Given how many shots of flyovers we get,
it actually isn't that too far away from Heathrow. Actually, it isn't that far away.
Actually, both of her parents work at Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
Like her mother used to work at Heathrow Airport, and her father still does. That's why you see him in the uniform.
Well, also, I think you see her sister in a stewardess uniform as well.
Yeah, it's like the local economy is based around the airport, which is good.
Yeah.
And I think that area of London is still very high population of Indians, isn't it? Heathrow, that sort of area, Hounslow.
I think so. I don't know the area well enough to to really comment. But
again, this is the thing. Like, immigrants come to the city, they settle near the airport because that's where they landed, and that's where the jobs are, and then they build a life from there. It's a very nice life. Look at it. Yeah. Father drives a Merc. They've got a nice house, semi with a front and back garden. What more do you want? Like, they have assimilated to British culture there. The father drives a fucking Merc. He wears a gold Rolex, although whether it's knockoff or not.
So I mean, I just want to say something quickly about the fathers. I mean, I don't know whether to do this now or put a pin in it, but the fathers of the two girls. That is because I don't know. Should we save that for in a minute or?
Let's save that for a bit. We've got Jessie's daydream, and then we've got this thing Jess does, which is very early noughties exposition dump trope. As she sits and talks to a photograph of David Beckham, a giant ass poster right above a bed, and like that's really interesting. What that is doing is, you know, her parents have got this picture down in the living room that to an outsider, it looks like they worship.
Yeah.
And she does the same with Beckham. Like, that's the parallel that's drawing. Like, she talks to Beckham the way people talk to pictures of religious figures.
I'll tell you something now, that any kid who is a football fan is going to have a massive poster of their of their favourite footballer. And I, like I said, I'll get it out of the way on stream now. I had a poster of Matt Le Tissier when I was a kid. I grew up a Southampton fan. Matt Le Tissier, greatest footballer ever to play for our club. It's so heartbreaking to see the way he's turned out.
I didn't have posters, but I was 8 years old when my parents bought me my first Manchester United home strip football shirt for Christmas with number 7 on the back. And it was Beckham's number.
Beckham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had my name put on the back of it, but it was Beckham's number. Because I was pissed off because the following year in the transfer window, he transferred out and they brought Ronaldo in. And for like 2 years, I wouldn't watch football because I was pissed off at Ronaldo taking Beckham.
A couple of years, but I'll say a couple of years ago, a couple of years beforehand, United fans were a bit pissed at Beckham having that number because Eric Cantona had that number.
Yeah, because that was Cantona's number. But like honestly, my reaction to Ronaldo coming in and Beckham leaving, it's like when Doctor Who fans get a new doctor. That was almost my reaction to someone else wearing the number 7 at Man U. It's like I didn't like it. It was something new, and then eventually I learned to love it, but it took time.
There's something. I just want to say because I know, in American sports culture, there's this tradition of like someone who's been legendary for like a certain team or something that they retired a number or the shirt or whatever. That's something that doesn't happen in like British like soccer at all. Not in British.
It doesn't, but there is like certain numbers.
Because otherwise, let's be honest, if we did that in British sport, number 7 of Man United would have been retired after George Best, quite frankly. So
yeah, but again, like to wear the number 7 shirt for Man United, growing up, as a Man United fan, like that was an honour. To wear the number 7 shirt for Manchester United was an honour because you were walking in the footsteps of Georgie Best. You were there for Cantona, and then eventually Beckham and even Ronaldo. Like the best Man United players wore the number 7. I think was Gary Lineker number 9 at Liverpool or number 11?
He never played for Liverpool. Everton.
Not Liverpool. Everton. Yeah, Everton.
Yeah. I think he was either 9. He was 9 or 10. He was 9 or 10. I can't remember.
Yeah. But like, we know footballers by their numbers. It's very, when a number becomes that deeply associated with a football player, it's really hard for anyone to step into that shirt.
Yeah.
So you've got to be somewhat special to take on certain numbers.
Well, and like in the U.S., certain teams will retire numbers.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what I was saying a minute ago. Yeah, we don't do that here.
Yeah, the numbers just don't get retired here. But yeah, so we've got this thing, and she's talking to Beckham, and it's something that's said but not said in this movie that I want to point out at this point. This girl, like, you've got the culture thing of is she white, is she Indian, is she white, is she Indian going on, and that's a really difficult path to walk when you come from an immigrant family. Like I would hazard a guess it's even harder when one of your parents is white, because that's the experience I have. But this thing of there's very much this balance of I'm Indian and I'm proud of where my family came from, and my parents came here with nothing and built it up, and I respect that and I love them for that. But also my parents don't understand English culture, and they don't understand the pressures on me. They don't understand the life I have to live because they're and as a teenager you think it's because they're backwards. It's not because they're backwards. It's because they never fully got the opportunity to integrate in the way you did if you were born in a British hospital.
Yeah,
they didn't go to school and learn in English, and there's a lot of cultural push and shove when you're in that position. Like I used to come home from school all the time, and my mum used to regularly say to me, you think you're feisty like those white kids, or just because your white friends get away with it, don't mean you can get away with it. Those comments were common, without a shred of irony of the fact that, mother, you sent me to a white people's school. You made that decision for me. Like, but these were, and again, same with my dad with being Polish. I used to get, you think you're English. You're not English, you're Polish, And that's never said explicitly in this movie, but it does play out in that
Yeah.
Indian cultural events versus the football, which is very like even the football strip is white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
It's kind of
it's,
it's sort of the England colours, isn't it? Almost. It's
it's trying for the England colours.
And it's like that is something that this movie does very well, is it, brings up the mirrors of the two worlds and then puts them into conflict with each other, and uses, like, especially in a lot of the, early aughts juxtaposition montages that fill the runtime, is it sets up its mirrors, points them at each other, and say this is the conflict, and it invites you to work through the conflict with the characters.
Yeah, because broadly what this movie is saying is, I don't care whether you're white, Indian, black, whatever you are, we all have the same values and the same understanding underneath it. We just say it in different ways and we speak in different accents. That's what this movie's getting at.
Yeah.
And this movie's basically saying, look, you might be Indian and worried your daughter's a lesbian, but these white people are white and worried the daughter's a lesbian too. And
I think they're worried that she's. I think they're worried that she was Lebanese.
Yeah, she's a Pisces.
Put a pin in it. Put a pin in that.
But no, but what the point is at the core, the worries are the same. The parents are just worried for their child's safety and can you have a good life, or are you going to be hounded in the streets like George Michael?
Yeah,
like. That's what
I just had this weird thought of like a story of an Indian family from the city I come from integrating, but I don't even know necessarily if this is the greatest example I can give, because it's a guy from my hometown who worked a summer job as a waiter in an Indian restaurant from my home city, the current Prime Minister of the UK. Okay,
yeah,
not my favourite person, but very interesting to see that certain people who were conservatives who don't like him because the colour of his skin, which is like...
I'm going to say something about Rishi Sunak.
I was going to say this. I don't like Rishi Sunak, but the colour of his skin and his heritage is not my fucking problem with the man.
Yeah, I'm going to say something about Rishi Sunak and then I'm going to just drop the topic entirely. Rishi Sunak is not integrated. Rishi Sunak is not an example of how woke Britain is. Rishi Sunak is the white man stooge running around and just managed to get a sniff of power because he was in the right place at the right fucking time. Rishi Sunak might be Asian on the outside, but he's white all the way through and he's Tory fucking blue as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like... I can't, like, he's only ever Indian or only ever Muslim when he wants to talk about our women or fucking, our this, our that, and make himself out to be some kind of
thing. And I just
some woke success story. He's fucking not.
He's not at all, because I mean he had privilege. Just be in a way. He had his own privilege.
Any man who can stand up in front of cameras and talk about protecting our women is not a fucking woke success story. And I don't care what colour his skin is. I don't
know. I mean, I'll just say something. There's a quick thing I'll say about this, and I don't know if I'm out to lunch on this. What I'm about to say on this, I might be. But are there a few? Do you think there are a few people from immigrant sort of cultures or whatever, that as a defense mechanism have I don't know, become better at the racism than our own native races. I'm thinking of a certain MP from
Rishi Suella.
I
Yes.
was going to say I was thinking of the MP from the constituency next to me, Fareham, and Miss Suella Braverman.
Suella Braverman, yes, who's become more racist than the racists.
Yeah.
There are absolutely, and I have, you know, again, family in Bradford who are more racist than some white people. But they're racist in the way white people are racist, so they're racist against themselves and they don't see it, and it annoys me.
I almost feel that this is like a topic we could do an entire stream on for another topic altogether. But I don't know. It was just a thought I was throwing out there. I don't.
No, it's right, because what it is, right? When you are a minority ethnicity, there's a process you go through. And what happens is, no matter how, like, again, I went to white schools in a, you know, it's not majority Muslim, but there's a very large Muslim population in Bradford. I think it's about 40-odd%. And what you learn when you're not white, but you're sent to those white areas, is you're always on the outskirts, you're always on the edges. So you develop this ability to ape whiteness. But there's always a bitterness there that you have to do it. And so the person you are around white people is not the same person you are around your own family. And that bitterness gets entrenched. So by the time you're an adult, you've got to make a choice. And you do eventually come to the point where you have to make a choice. Am I white or am I minority?
Yeah.
If you say I'm white, you go the way of Sunak and Braverman and them, and you start to demonize everything about
Braverman.
Please let me
finish.
Let me finish. You start to demonize everything about the culture you're from. If you go the way of saying I'm minority, you start to demonize everything about white people. I never made that choice. I always said, you know what? No, I will eat curry and fish and chips. In fact, I'll have curry sauce with my fish and chips. You know,
that sounds really good.
No, Dan, it is really good. I recommend it. But if you want your curry sauce, you go to the Chinese around the corner from the fish and chip shop. You don't buy it from the chippy. You know, and it's one of those things. It's really difficult to exist between the cultural boundaries in Britain, because no matter what group you're in, there's going to be a part of you that you have to hide.
Damn it! Now I'm craving curry over chips.
Good.
Okay. You hooked while you were here.
Sorry, I was only going to say a very quick thing, Noodle. I was going to say, and Braverman's predecessor of a very similar ilk, Miss Preeti.
Yes. Priti Patel, yes, who decided to bring it into law that if you spoke out against the British government and you had even one grandparent who came from a country that wasn't Britain, you could be deported to that fucking country. I don't speak Polish, so here's hoping they don't grab hold of me before I leave. You know?
Well, I mean, there are two other countries that they can choose.
But I would pay money for some fucking Tory copper sitting down and be like, we're going to deport you to your grandparents' country, and then trying to work the fuck out which one. I would pay money to see a white person try and figure that shit out. Because I don't know what countries my grandparents were from, never mind them. I just... It's a lot, okay? It's a lot being mixed or being... second or third generation immigrant in Britain. It's a lot.
I'll just say this very quickly. This isn't really related to Britain, but a very funny little thing I saw from an Australian comic, an Aboriginal Australian comic, when there was Australia was on this big thing about quote unquote boat people. We got to stop the boat people coming in. We got to get rid of the boat
Stop
people.
The boats.
And
Stop the boats.
And the stock, yeah, very similar to what we're hearing in it. And this Aboriginal comic says, I'm totally in favour of getting rid of a lot of these boat people, but can we backdate this to 1760?
Brilliant. No, but like, You say that about boats, right? It's still like, you know how every culture has an idiom of "Do you think I'm an idiot?" A lot of people say, "Do you think I was born yesterday?"
Yeah.
In the culture I grew up in, the comment was, "You think I come in on yesterday's banana boat?" Like that was how we idiomized that statement of, "You think I came in on yesterday's banana boat?" Like, you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I don't know what you're talking about? And that's, that statement in and of it's like, I could write an essay on the intricacies of that statement and what it's saying about British colonialism.
Yeah.
Well, there was actually very quick one. There was a quick joke a few years ago on Have I Got Used To It, I remember, where someone had successfully got their infant's baby son onto the electoral register. So someone ventured, well, which way would this kid have voted? And Ian Hislop says, well, he was born yesterday. He's going to vote Tory.
Fantastic. Yeah. But like, anyway, we're off topic. So let's go back to the movie, right? Because this movie is a very good movie. As much as we've talked about other stuff around it, but this is all context for this movie. And it's so important, right? It's so important that the parents, they assimilated certain things, but not other things. The father wears a Rolex, the father wears a suit and tie, the father drives a Merc. These are cultural things. And you see it also, you see it from the other side, because you see Joe. And I want to talk about Joe. Because I know we said we'd go linear, but I feel like I'm going thematic, so I want to talk about Joe.
It's like we're going to go linear, and then we decided to just go thematic.
This is one of those things we always decide to go one way or the other, and then ends up going the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, Joe.
Joe's Catholic Irish. Or, like, his religion's not a big part of it, but he's Irish. And, from his accent, you can gather he's Catholic. From his drinking habits, or the insinuation, the idea that he works in a pub, and the way the film is very, very clever to make it seem like he drinks a lot, but he doesn't. He's very Catholic. I say that as an ex-Catholic. He's very Catholic.
There's something he said in this, and I know this is again maybe I put a pin in the moment, but I want to highlight it now because it may not. It's one of those things that nowadays in this country it may not resonate quite so hard, and I think in a way this is a good thing that when the when the racial slur is used and he says, "Listen, I understand it. I'm Irish." Now maybe that might not nowadays that might not necessarily come across so well, and it's like, but when we got to say this come out in two. Into the peace process with Ireland at Northern Ireland at this time,
Let me translate that comment for you. In 2003, when Joe said, "Of course I understand what it's like, I'm Irish." If you remade this film now and you made Joe Polish,
better. That would be almost a better example.
Or Romanian,
now.
Like if this movie came out in 2023 and he was Polish and he said, "Of course I understand, I'm Polish," that would hit the audiences in the same way, I think.
In a way it's a good thing. In a way it's a good thing because it doesn't hit so hard now, because it means that I'm not saying racism towards Irish people doesn't exist in Britain anymore, but I am saying we're in a much better place than we were when this movie.
We've got a beautiful tradition of stand-up comics in the UK, and a lot of them are Irish. Like Dara O'Brien carries not all of his comedies for me. Like some of it is, I really like some of his stuff. Like the Neutrinos and Mutating skit is brilliant. But Dara O'Brien is very much like, he is, if you were going to name like the top 3 reasons why British people don't treat Irish people like shit anymore, he would definitely be in that top 3 list.
Yeah.
Like he's up there with the Good Friday Agreement and frigging Guinness on tap in pubs. Like, you know, he's a cultural thing, and it's not just him. There's other Irish comics as well, but like that little group of Irish comics have made such a difference in the last 20 years.
But I can tell you though that look, growing up, when there was racist jokes going about, I'd say 25% of them were about black people, 25% about Asian people, 50% of them were about Irish people.
Yeah.
So
when I was growing up,
my maternal grandmother is half Irish, half Italian, and I'm going to be shaming my ancestors when I say Guinness is fucking disgusting.
Mix it with Red Bull, and no, it's not. It's gorgeous.
Okay, well,
Trust
I
me,
mean, to be
mix it
fair,
half
I
and half
can't
with Red
have
Bull.
anything with hops. I can't have anything with hops in it because it fucks up my stomach. So, like, I can't have
Okay.
any beer. But it is like drinking a loaf of bread. It is. Yeah.
I
I'm
haven't.
gonna let
Jameson.
stomach
I'll take
tear into you
Jameson.
for that comment.
No.
Just give me the Jameson. I'll take that. No
I'm
Guinness.
I'm not gonna tear into Kitty too much for this because listen, I love Guinness. I only drink it in the winter months though, because like this time of year I don't feel it because it's very a refreshing drink. It's too hot for Guinness. But I've always heard now, and I've loads of people have told me, and I don't know this for a fact because I've never been to Ireland, but I've always been told you haven't drunk Guinness until you've drunk it in Ireland, and there's something different. There's something different about it. I don't know if it's the water they use or something is pure, or I don't know. But apparently, it is Guinness in Ireland is
but
Guinness
that's
brewed in Ireland.
It's like you've never drunk. It's like you've never drunk a proper Scotch until you've drunk it in Scotland.
Yeah.
Because it's different there. It tastes different.
You know, touching on, Joe and the discussion of racism around him, I will point out that Bend It Like Beckham does something very nice. Is it puts the they all look the same jokes in instead of like all minorities look alike.
They invert that.
All white, it inverts the they all look the same joke.
Oh yeah, no. Let me tell you something about Indian culture.
Whoa! Can I get this one in first here? Can I get this one in first? I had a work colleague who sadly passed away during the pandemic. Rest in peace to him. He was Chinese.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the times I went out working with him, delivering. We went out in the van delivering together, and I was talking to about he not long started in our workplace. I was talking to him about someone in the office or whatever. He says, "Oh, I don't know who that is," and I tried to describe him. He just says, "I don't know. All you fuckers look the same to me." Yeah. And I just burst out laughing because I knew what he was saying, and it was like, oh my god, how many times has he had a British person say that to him, and he turned around and says, "All you fuckers look same to me."
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and it's one of those things, right? That is a really common joke in minority areas and in minority families. Like my mum always used to be, I'd bring friends home from school for tea or whatever, because that's what we do in Britain. Like, you bring your friends home for tea. And literally, like, I'd talk about one friend, and my mum would be like, "Is that the one who?" And I'd be like, "No." She's like, "Oh, they all look the same at me." Like, even to the point, my mum used to make those jokes with my dad. Like, my mum literally used to joke with my dad that, all white, like, my dad would talk about, he's Polish and the English people and Irish people. And my mum would just look at him and go, "I don't know why you're all talking about each other like you're different. You all look the same to me." Polishman and Irishman, a Scotsman and an Englishman sat in a bar drinking. And my mother pipes up and goes, "They all look the same to me."
Yeah.
Because that was the joke. Like, that is very much a joke that like, as a minority, we turn on its head.
And like to just like touch on this, really quick, it just goes to show you that the entire concept of whiteness, like, Irish people are pasty motherfuckers. I mean, they look like me, but for a while they were not considered white, even though they look like me.
Maybe not in America. They've always been white in Britain. They've just not always been English.
They weren't
you have to
here,
understand the thing
here in
about
America.
British racism,
The Italians and the Irish were not considered white at first.
Yeah, like that I don't think that was a thing really in Britain. Like the thing you have to understand about British racism, when we talk about British racism, what we're talking about is English nationalism. Like, we use those terms interchangeably. Like, an English person absolutely will consider themselves, if they're racist, superior to the Irish and the Scottish, even though they all turn the same bright red lobster color under the sun. Like, they all burn the same, but they will consider themselves superior.
So,
And, like,
Everybody just forgets about the Cornish.
sorry, except for the Scots, because that takes them a week of sunbathing to go white. Sorry, I was born in Scotland. I can make that joke, okay?
Yeah, no, it takes the Scots a week in the sun to turn white. Yeah, that's about right. But this is the thing, right? I reckon, like, I saw this meme. I'm gonna go find the meme while you're all talking, because it's a fantastic meme that I need to share. So yeah, keep talking amongst yourselves, because like,
yeah,
I need to. Because it's something I want to show Scummer, and I want Scummer's visceral reaction on screen because it's hilarious.
Okay, I'll wait in bated breath.
Waiting in, yeah. I think I reblogged it on. Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about Joe and what Joe is for a lot of the white audience, and this is why I like Joe. Right, Joe he's the white person's avatar for Jess. Like, he is how white people will understand and begin to empathize with the racism she's facing, because he says, I've faced this too, and therefore white people can identify with that because they're the same color.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he's for from a technical point of view, from a writing and directive point of view.
Yeah, he is, like, there are, like, basically just has two white mirrors in the film. We have Joe who
Joe and Jules, really, aren't they?
Joe and Jules.
Yeah.
And I just
Jules
realized,
is the very stereotypical, white English girl, except for the fact that she plays football.
But, and it was made very deliberate when Jess first, gets into the uniform, and we have Joe, comparing scars with her.
Yes. That's why he's there, right? He's there as the white person. He's like Fisher Price, my first victim of racism.
Yeah.
And he's there to help you if you don't automatically empathize with Jess. He's
Intro to empathizing with racist targeting for dummies.
Yeah. So, Ring, I'm sending you.
Yep.
This is a post I saw on Tumblr, sorry. This is the post. Sick of Scottish independence, this, and Irish reunification, that. There's 3 of us and 1 of England. I say we just kick the English out altogether. And someone else replied, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales kick England out and join the UK as the United Celtic Nations. I'd like to offer this up as a suggestion with the option of a hard border. Let me zoom out a little bit, because I want to see Scummer's reaction. Okay?
No fair.
So this is
Move the fucking border west so I can be in there.
Wait. And then someone replied, come on, guys, push further. Yorkshire doesn't want to be part of England either.
No. Neither do we. At least fucking move west to Hampshire.
But like that is so indicative of what British culture is, and
Yeah.
the way the interplay between the different countries in Britain.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I was like, I knew Scummer was immediately gonna say, "No, push west." Sorry, push east, because
We'll just leave
like
Sussex and Kent by themselves, and maybe a
Look,
bit of London.
and
you know.
London and London. But
Yeah.
like, if that was a map of the UK and I was in the green bit, I'd probably want to stay a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
it's
like
just it's,
wouldn't punching bag also be in the green bit?
no, because because if we formed a country in the green bit, we'd have the power to deport her.
She'd be deported. She would be.
She absolutely would be deported.
I mean, even though,
Like-
like, you know, on my dad's side, at least tracing
Actually,
my upbringing,
I have an even
Look,
better
I need you to understand that the Scottish nearly started a civil war in the UK over transgender rights.
Yeah.
Them defending
yeah, no, the
the
Scottish
London.
like are awesome.
Yeah.
Like
But-
if the Scottish became if Scotland became its own country, I think like aside from forming a government, the first act would probably be to officially deport the China punching bag.
Yeah.
The
I
thing
mean,
is,
like,
if
good on
Scotland
them.
became a
Hashtag-
country, I mean,
Yeah.
the problem is if Scotland became a country, it would have to immediately close its borders because everyone north of Watford Gap would want to go there.
Hashtag Free Scotland.
Yeah, free Scotland. Yeah, I will say I'm very much in favour of Scottish independence. Mainly because I want to
I'm
see
just
how
in
London's
favour
going to cope without the
independence
income from North Sea oil.
general, like I like the idea of a country having their own self-governance, and you know, I'm anti-imperialism, so yeah, let the
Yeah.
Irish
Generally, I am
reunify,
very.
let Scottish have independence, like let's go.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
Like, this is.
you know,
I mean,
like, generally,
I
I
mean-
am very Republican with a little R. Like the reason I voted for Brexit is the same reason I support the independence of the Falklands and the independence of Ireland and the independence of Scotland. Like, those are all the same reason, at least from my point of view. Of
and
let
I'm
countries
gonna
rule themselves.
and I'm gonna segue us back by reminding everyone of that how when Ireland and Scotland play each other at football, they chant they chant at each other, "We hate England more than you."
England more than
Yeah.
you.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is so
It
true.
is true.
So back to the football and Beckham.
Yes, back to the football. So, like, but this is the thing, right? If you're a kid in Britain, and I can say this with some, you know, again, my cousins are half Indian, half Jamaican. I'm half Indian, half Jamaican. Lots of Muslim friends, etc. If you were a kid in Britain in the early 2000s, you worshipped Beckham. Like it's one of those things like that. This movie gets really right. Is it's found a cultural touch point,
Yeah.
and it's holy shit, David Beckham. Which, you know, he went on to sell perfume and underwear. So,
Well, like
But-
I said earlier, Beckham was a brand, even
Yes,
more so
very
than a
much so.
football player. I mean,
So-
to the point when Real Madrid signed him for Manchester United, they admitted themselves that getting a good football player was secondary to his
to get in the brand.
value as a brand. How many shirts they could sell on the back with the word
With-
Beckham on the back, you know.
Yeah.
That was their main motivation for signing David Beckham.
And like and again, early 2000s. Now, this film is very much of its time, right? You've got Spice
yeah.
Girls jokes, Beckham, the montage.
The
oh my God,
montages.
the montages.
You could, like,
I'd
you could
forgotten
play
about
a
the
drinking-
montages.
You could play a drinking game with the early 2000 montages.
Oh
Be
yeah.
very careful what you're drinking if you do that.
Oh, and I will say, here's me being a score snob again. I guess I'm just going to have to accept it.
But
But I think Bend It Like Beckham would have been better if it had leaned if it had leaned more into the Indian inspiration for its score and used a lot less of the early
yeah, but
aughts
the
pop
point
songs.
was
Yeah.
the point was that those songs were a mashup and stuff. The thing
I
is, as
don't
well,
know.
right? You have to understand, and I'm going to say this: this was a very courageous film for its time.
Yeah.
It was courageous in that way. Politicians who don't want to lose elections can't afford to be courageous.
Yeah.
So it's a very courageous film
Yeah.
for its time.
I thought it was a
and-
very good blend of like British popular music and indie music,
Yeah.
and of course, because it's a film about soccer, football, whatever whichever word you want to use here, you have to have Nissim Dorma in there. You've
Yeah.
got to have that in there.
No,
I'm
what I
honestly
mean
surprised.
is like the montages set to the pop music felt too generic 2000s film for me.
That's what they were for, though. They were there to say,
Yeah.
look, she's taking part in white culture. This is white culture. This is showing you. And it's only towards the end of the film you start to get the mashup with the Indian music in those montages. That's what that's for. That's showing you that progression. But like the thing is as well, right? Indian music is very hard to sing along to. Like, even if you speak Punjabi, it's a very difficult music to sing along to. And it has a very specific beat and scansion to it.
Yeah.
Like you saw, like we were all streaming together. I was on video and I physically couldn't stop myself, like the hand movements for the Indian music. Yeah. There didn't need to be a lot there for it to really strike a chord with the Indian viewers. And then there couldn't be too much of that in there because it would then alienate the majority of the white viewers.
Yeah.
So I think it was actually well in that.
There was enough. There was enough in it to give it that little bit of Bollywood feel, though, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I think as well, like this was before.
Maybe it would be better to say. I would have liked the track. I would have liked the score a lot better if it were more instrumental.
Okay. I'm going to translate what you've just said, like, as what I'm hearing. This film would have been better if it was made in 2023 after Indians were more accepted in British culture. That's what I'm hearing you say. Because that's what you're saying translates as to me. And that's not me having a dig. That's just me saying, look, in 2002, to even make a film with an Indian family in it was that was for the mainstream white audience in Britain. Like, Bollywood movies still don't get good general releases in British cinemas now.
No.
Like, I think
if I want to see a Bollywood movie in the cinema, I get 3 days in Bradford if I'm lucky.
At the like the art, you get like 3 days at like an art house cinema.
I think more my point is I'm being a crotchety old grandpa and not liking pop song montages in my movies and cringing at it.
But this is the thing, the pop song in the 90s, it's all about the white culture. It all feeds in. So you don't like the 90s montages. But, you know, I don't like it when Americans make movies about British monarchs from the 1800s and they've got zips on the dresses. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Basically, is my response to that.
Like, and I can see that, you know, using the 2000 pop songs in the montages does help tell the story. So I agree that it has more artistic merit than most pop song montages do.
And I think it's only fair. And I do think it's only fair that they used one of Mel C's songs after they made a joke at her expense.
Yeah.
Yeah, let her get her bag from that.
Yeah. But I think as well, it's really important to point out, Ring, you did not grow up in the British culture that those songs permeated. Like,
Yeah.
I turned to you and Hot, Hot, Hot and hearing Ness and Dormer at the football, and those things are just so... You know, you could, like, that final scene where the operatic music plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that was an American football scene, that would be like the American national anthem playing there. Like, if they were out in a club in America drinking and dancing or whatever else after winning a match, that would be, it's the music that played there, the Mel C music, you know, the Spice Girls and everything that feeds into. That would be the equivalent of playing like Lady Gaga or something in the club. Like, those songs are culturally representative of Britain. That's why they're there.
Well, yeah, and I bitch about like pop music montages in American films too.
Yeah, you do, which is fair enough. But the point I'm making is, in this film, they're there because they are showing you that difference between the English and the Indian.
And I am agreeing that in the sense of, you know, the score upholding the themes and the storytelling of the movie, it has a lot of artistic merit, and it is right on that note. Taste-wise, I probably would have preferred something more instrumental.
Like, a matter of taste. Like, if you prefer movies that are a little bit Western with more Bollywood influence, go watch Bride and Prejudice. You'll love it. It's the same director, but it's got a lot more Indian music in it, and it's based in India.
I mean,
you're in America, and it's
on the minuscule chance that Ben Shapiro ever sees this, that is how you review the score of a movie, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
I am still sore about that.
Yeah, I think we all are. It's okay. But yeah, like I love the score of this movie. It's very nostalgic.
Let's all math tag Ben Shapiro when we share this stream later, okay?
Oh God!
I doubt
we need to clip. Somebody clip what Rings just said, and we'll bombard that to Ben Shapiro, okay?
Yeah. But yeah, like, and again, you get these things that are very British. Like, do you understand the exams she was taking? Like, obviously, I know Ring does, because Ring knew me when I was taking A levels. But generally, Americans, like, she BLB. Yeah, she passed her A levels with very good, like, with good grades. Her A levels is. A levels are academically equivalent to like your first and second year of college in America, but they're like they are. We study them from 16 to 18 to prepare us for university, and we only go to university for 3 years because A levels are supposed to prepare us for it. We don't have 4-year colleges in the UK.
Like, I think in terms of like school placement, the closest American equivalent would be like the SATs, ACTs.
Yeah. Also, can I just Scummer 2 B's and she's getting to go to uni to be a solicitor?
Those were the days.
Those were the days. Back when she'd have only paid. She would have even paid for uni in 2002, would she? Or was it 3 grand
I don't know.
Year?
I'm trying to remember when
3 grand
Blair. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when Blair bought the tuition fees in, actually. It must have been around that time.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. She got 2 Bs, and she got the LL, which is equivalent to A's. So 2 A's, 2 Bs, right? When I went to uni, you needed 3 A's to even be considered to study English or history. Not law, just English or history at some universities.
This is why a lot of times, like, people would go to college in the UK and retake GCSEs to try and get them a grade, get them into a university course that they wanted.
Yeah.
Because if they only got like a C on their GCSEs and they needed at least a B.
Let me explain to you. In 2011, when I was applying to uni, I had 14 GCSEs, 12 A grades and 2 Bs. I had A, B, C at A level, and an A-star extended project qualification, which was the equivalent to an AS level. And it was not guaranteed that I would get into my first choice university to study history.
Mm.
Like, that's how competitive it was.
Or here's a fun, because I actually do have experience trying to get into a UK college. I had to take the IELTS to see if I was even eligible to apply. For those of you who don't know, the IELTS is basically an English language test.
Yeah.
I was the only white guy. I was the only white person in the entire, like, except, you know, the administrators. I was the only white guy in the entire building.
You've got these bad habit of leaving out the letter U from the words like colour and labour. So, you know,
you really overuse your Zs.
Yeah.
And you say them wrong, you know. But like, no, this is the thing, right? American university, British university, really competitive.
Yeah. So I won't go too hard on it.
14, like, if you want to go to university in Britain, you decide at 14 years old what you want to study at university in Britain.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take the GCSE in it and then the A-level in it, you ain't getting onto that course at uni. And you pick your GCSEs at 13 for the following year to start.
Yeah.
So,
but,
you know,
yeah,
it's madness.
Anyway, Ring, I won't hammer you too much on that stuff this week, because we did the Happy Treason Day stuff last week.
The point is, right, Jess, and it's really interesting. The point is, Jessie's a fairly average student. She's average. Yeah, she's 2 Bs, and I don't know what the LL would have been like. I can't even figure out what that would be unless she took BTECs or something. But like, she's a very average student. She's nothing special. And yet her parents still think she can go be a solicitor with that. Like, I had friends who wanted to study law who were crying on results day because they got a B.
She's lucky that she was talented in sport and got scouted for an American university.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll just say
at that time, her grades were perfectly acceptable to go off and be a solicitor.
And I'll just say something. I'll just say something to like Ring Kitty to the Americans. Sports scholarships are not a thing in the UK.
Yeah, they don't exist. There's no such thing as sports scholarship in the UK. Like, the idea of playing sports to get to uni, no. Like, it's just not the same way. Like, studying extra or doing a maths thing, or taking the international baccalaureate, yeah, that's how you get a scholarship. You don't get a scholarship by playing sports in the UK. Not how that works.
Well, that's because...
in fact, like, the number of people I knew who were on the school rounders team, netball team, football team, and quit the team in year 9 to focus on their GCSEs because they knew the sports was not going to get them anywhere. And they needed to focus on the studies.
And that's America very much way overvalues sports because that's how schools get their money.
Well, so I said, college sports are not a thing here. And I say even like the biggest rivalry with sports in British universities would be Oxford and Cambridge.
The varsity,
the varsity, in particular, the boat race and the rugby match are the 2 big things. But nobody is getting a scholarship. But no one is going to get a scholarship because they're a good rower or they're a good rugby player to either of those universities.
No, it's like I went to uni in Leicester, and we had the varsity, and the rugby matches were rough. But rugby was definitely second to the academics. But also, like, through all the years I've known, I've only ever known one person who got a scholarship to uni based on a reason that wasn't pure academics. And that was someone who, by the time she was 18, was a grade 8 clarinet. And she also, I think she was like a grade 6 keyboard as well. And she was music scholarship for Leeds. And even then, she had to apply for the scholarship and like go through multiple interviews to get it. And like she was playing at like a massive, like she was even learning violin as well as an extra instrument to try and get this scholarship. And she was, she was something special with music. Like we went to the same secondary school and the same sixth form. She was a couple of years above me. And like, I remember being in year 7 and seeing her playing clarinet on stage during assemblies. And, she was, I've seen a lot of live music played. She was as good then as some of the musicians I see playing at the Leeds Grand or at the Bradford Alhambra or at the York Grand or wherever I go to see music played now.
Yeah.
Like she was as good then as they are now. And she was not the first consideration for that scholarship.
See, I think art scholarships are more valuable than sports ones. Like part of the reason why sports scholarships are like a big deal here or why sports are such a big deal is because of well, yes, the money, but it goes back to cutting the funding, and it's why so many people are drowning in student loan debt right now in this country, because they cut the federal spending on those universities. So then that fell on to the students to make up the slack, and sports games bring in money for the schools.
Yeah, but it's like that kind of thing. It's just the most quote unquote normal or normalized statement her parents make is that like, you played football when you were young, it's time to grow up and focus on school now. Like,
yeah,
I mean, but
that to me does not even strike me as a weird comment to make.
But the thing is here, obviously, sports don't even bring in money for universities in Britain. So, because it's like there is not that tradition of college sports, like big fandom around it.
They're a money sink.
Yeah. I mean, and you got to bear in mind, especially like I mentioned the vast the rugby match in Oxford and Cambridge. And a lot of the players that went on to become international rugby players did come from Oxford and Cambridge, but no one's becoming a big blooming star playing rugby, even if you're well paid for it. The pay gap between that and football is something different altogether.
I mean, look at the pay gap between a university football coach and a university professor in the U.S.
And that tells you everything, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So the idea of her getting a scholarship for sports is just mind-blowing all of its own. That's why I think this film waits till so late in the film to introduce that idea.
Yeah.
Because if you'd have introduced that early in the film and said that's what she's aiming for throughout the film, most people wouldn't have watched it because they'd have just been like, this is bullshit. She's got good grades. Why she's going to uni? What the fuck?
Well, I mean,
it would not have computed for a British audience.
They did introduce the idea of the American Scout pretty early in the film, but it was
not. Yeah.
Well, all they're introducing is the fact that professional football, soccer, was a thing in the US, and it was not a thing in Britain back in. We're talking only 20 years ago. Professional women's football was not a thing. It is a thing now. And I said this off screen before. I said this off screen before we went live. We've made progress. We've made a lot of progress. I mean, to the fact where we've seen results with like the England national team, like for example, the Lionesses, the England, they're the European champions. They were runners-up in the World Cup to the United States. We've made progress, but there's still a way to go. There's still a ways to go.
The thing is, Scummy, we haven't made progress because British sports fans only give a shit about their national team when they're winning if it's women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't care about the Lionesses when they weren't playing in the final.
Also,
And even when they were playing in the final and doing well, the sexism and the racist jokes and the commentary were still there.
Also,
There's-
something,
So I
something.
think it's being a little bit too charitable to say that there's been some
I'm saying,
progress, but not a lot.
I'm saying there's progress in the fact that look, women, women's professional soccer is a thing. Women's soccer is on TV, is getting TV deals now. The big thing, obviously, the big problem I have, especially at the moment, the fucking pay disparity. That the best women's player in the women's Super League here is probably earning a fraction of the worst Premier League player.
Just to from my point of view, to say there's been progress in English women's football over the last 20 years is like saying it was progress when archery competitions introduced a target instead of a tree. Like, yeah, but also, duh.
So, let's jump from the racism in sport and discuss Jess's father.
Yes, let's do that. English cricket is racist as fuck. There, I said it. Let's go.
Oh, the whole reason that triggered this stream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's have that conversation.
And this was because there was a report, an independent report into English, the culture of English cricket, that there was a culture still existing of just elitism in English cricket based on things like race and class and
accent, north or south,
gender, sex, and so I mean, look, I'll say this: rugby union for a long time was the game of the upper classes. Football, soccer was the game of the working classes. Although I almost feel like they're trying to take that away from us now. Cricket is the game of the white English middle class
and upper classes. Yeah, like you go to cricket with a picnic basket with fresh strawberries in it. Like you don't go and have a pint and a pasty. It's not.
Well, no, because it's about. And I know I've been to cricket games because it's about £7 a bloody pint at cricket. So,
and even in London, £7 a pint's a lot.
Events though,
no.
At least it is here. Like all sporting events, it's like exorbitant prices.
There will be an increase in the prices on match day, but not like cricket.
No.
Cricket.
Even I can go to St Mary's Stadium, okay. And look, I tell you that the football clubs, they rip you off like fuck, but they're nothing compared to the cricket.
Yeah, like,
and I know. Look,
and just to put this into perspective,
Hampshire cricket is like a mile from my house. Okay, I can walk there and go and watch a game. I hardly ever go.
So yeah, like I live literally a bus ride from Headingley Stadium. Okay, so I need you to understand the context that this report got released into, though, because it's British sport and it's talking about how cricket's not structurally racist. This report is on the back of something from 2021 called the UK Race Report. The UK Race Report claimed that the UK was not institutionally racist. That was its final conclusion. I'm going to read you what the UN Working Group said in response to that report in 2021. It said that the report not only provided no evidence of its claim that the UK was not institutionally racist, but made shocking misstatements and or misunderstandings about data collection and mixed method research, while also attempting to delegitimize data grounded in lived evidence and shifting the blame for the impacts of racism to the people most impacted by it. That was how the UN responded to what they described as a reprehensible report on race in 2021. Britain is
Yeah.
racist as fuck, and it doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like that's fucked. And you know, they're better in some respects, you know, on sexism than like the US, because like you guys have had female prime ministers, we have yet to have a female president.
No.
But it's a low bar. I mean, like for fuck's sake, I was
No.
looking up women's football teams in Britain, and like the Gloucester City women, like that team was formed in 2021. Like that is so recent for like more women's teams, and I don't get it. Like what?
Kitty,
It's 2023.
I'm going to say something to you, and you know I'm your friend, and you know I love you. But tell me you don't understand British sexism when you tell me that you've had a female prime minister, therefore you're further ahead than America.
I'm saying that it's slightly better than the US. Just slightly.
Well, we'll
No,
just
it's
say
not.
though,
It's not.
we'll just say Margaret Thatcher was the biggest enemy of feminism, I think, ever.
No argument.
I think
Margaret Thatcher,
as for our second female prime minister, I'm going to say
that wasn't
something.
female, that was robotic.
Yeah, well, I just want to say second. No, Theresa May.
No, right. Fuck, I totally forgot about her.
Yeah, well,
I bet the wheat farmers don't.
Can I just say something? It's a sad state of affairs that Britain's been in over the last 5 years, that there are people that look back on her reign as prime minister as somewhat successful now.
Well, when you compare it to Boris,
if you said
Liz
to me
Truss,
now,
like...
No, but like, when Boris left, if you'd have said to me then, you can have Rishi or you can have Maybot back, I'd have taken May.
Yeah, Christ.
If you'd have said to me Liz Truss or Maybot, I'll take Maybot.
Strong.
Maybot over Boris.
I mean, the one good thing I could say about Theresa May is she at least it's that she at least had some respect for Parliament and the thing of being a member of Parliament, as to the fact that she actually spoke out against a lot of her party recently, because of Boris Johnson. She was as disgusted as anyone by Boris Johnson's lies
and I think
to the public.
She was the last prime minister the UK has had who I think had anything resembling respect for the office she held.
Yes.
And I don't say that lightly, because my God, I have nothing much else. But, yeah,
it just
she at least had
my
respect
mind.
for the office she held.
Like, it just boggles my mind that, like, you know, they're still like forming like new women's teams like 20 years after, you know, this movie came out, you know, that women's football teams are just now being formed. Like, again, the team in Gloucester was only formed in 2021.
I'll tell you the best one. My university didn't have a women's football team, but it had a Quidditch team.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I can believe that. I totally believe that.
Okay. All right. You know what? Hold on. Just a little bit of a palate cleanser. Sibby, this is for you. Like, in May, in Gloucester, Massachusetts, there is a place called Hammond Castle, and they have a vampire party every May. So you will be stateside then. It's not that long of a drive. I mean, it's like an eight or so hour drive, but like you and I might get all gossed up and go to Gloucester and have some vampire party fun.
Excuse me, an 8 hour drive. You know, if I got in a car in England and drove for 8 hours, I'd be in fucking Poland.
Sweetheart, I literally drive an hour and a half, you know, or a little over an hour each way to get my son to therapy. Okay, like driving.
I think that's Like, I think I'd have to drive 4 or 5 hours or something to actually visit Noodle, and that would be considered. That's considered
from
like
Florida. I have driven it 19 hours. I made it in 17 once.
You're mad.
Yeah.
You're mad.
Well,
You're
we're
mad.
all mad.
If I
He
have
hears
to
to
be in a
be.
car for
We're
more than
all
5
mad.
hours, what I have to be in is a plane.
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Like-
You could fly.
I'm
But-
not driving for 8 hours when I can get on a plane for one. Like,
Yeah, but when you go through TSA, it ends up being like 8 hours for a 1 hour flight. Like it's ridiculous.
Not if you don't wear like you say that you put your golf boots in the suitcase and you wear slippers onto the plane.
Yeah.
All right. Bet. But I wanted a little bit of levity because
Look,
you know.
look, I'm not being funny. You're talking to the Asian looking person who travels on a British passport and is from Bradford. I fully expect to have issues at the American airport when I arrive. I did last time.
I'll just say one quick thing before we get back to the topic, because you were talking about our female prime ministers in this country. The last one, she said something at the Conservative Party conference about what she called the anti-growth coalition.
Oh God!
Within a day of that, News Fund put out a spoof of the Avengers shirt, and it said anti-growth coalition assemble, and I liked it, so I ordered it. But by the time it arrived, she was fucking gone.
I mean,
oh no, the best one.
Didn't a cabbage outlive
the lettuce,
or
lettuce.
whatever outlive
Liz Truss? Yeah.
She was there for 6 weeks. She was there for 6 weeks, and bear in mind, 2 weeks of that was taken up with the parsoning of the Queen, where nothing happened.
Maggie, look, I'm just gonna say it. Maggie Thatcher might have been a milk snatcher, but Theresa May stole lunch trays. End of discussion.
And Liz Truss managed to lose 30 billion quid in 6 weeks.
Fuck.
But anyways,
she trusts us up like a turkey, didn't she?
So let's discuss how horrifically wrong Plugged In was in their assessment of the father's character arc.
So yeah, the father is very loving towards his children. Like, I need you to understand that the father's behavior is not how Indian fathers and Indian men treat their daughters and their wives.
Yeah,
like
I liked her father in this. I liked him throughout, and I always got the and the thing was that I got his motivations for trying to discourage her from playing sports or football was different from the mother's motivation, but it was because he did not want to see his daughter go through what he went through. He did not want to see his daughter heartbroken by the same thing. And you had this different, and this, like I said, there was this different thing that went on between both the mothers of Jules and Jess, and there's this thing with the fathers there as well, that they're both loving. And I just said it was really weird seeing Frank Harper playing but Jules's character, her father's quite supportive. Very much. They're having a kickabout with her. And I feel like the only difference between them, in a sense, is Jules's father. Yeah, he doesn't. He hasn't experienced racism or whatever, and you get the feeling that if Jess's father had not experienced that, he'd be out in the back garden having a kickabout with her.
Yeah, like you see it at the end of the movie when he's playing cricket with Joe. He's gone from being this very staunch, upright father who wants his daughter to be a solicitor to supporting her going off to America to play football and bringing home a Gora. That's a massive character arc for that character, but it's not out of character for that character. You absolutely know from this movie, he loves her, he wants what's best for her, and he wants her to live her own life. Whereas the mother reminds me of sort of, again, it's Hyacinth Bouquet, it's It's the mother from Pride and Prejudice. It's, what would the neighbours think? And, it is a truth universally acknowledged that every Indian boy wants a girlfriend who can make round chapati. Like,
Yeah.
That's that character. And look, I feel sorry for the mother in a way, right? Because she's in a culture, and I know women like this. They're in a culture where, like, we weren't given a choice growing up. Like, my mother kept me away from her family growing up because she didn't want me dragged into the kitchen cooking dal and rice and making samosas and being forced to cook clean and skivvy after the family. Like, my mother consciously made that decision not to teach me to cook because she knew the minute she taught me to cook, her family would have me in the kitchen. Like, hence why Ring does most of the cooking in our marriage now. When we're in the same.
Also because I really like cooking.
Yeah, but like I don't like cooking because for me cooking, I mean once in a while, yeah, but for me cooking has that historical baggage of that's woman's work because a woman's place is in the kitchen. And
that cultural generational trauma.
Yes, very much so. Like my mum, I remember my mum has suffered a lot of medical conditions, and anecdote time. My mum had something called pancreatitis, and when she had a pancreas attack, she could be in the hospital for 6 or 8 weeks at a time, sometimes longer. And I'm talking in high dependency, with drips coming out of her, not allowed to eat, sometimes not conscious, on strong. Like she was allergic to morphine, so they gave her a morphine substitute medication. And they gave her more than the recommended maximum limit of that medication. It's a medication they give to women in childbirth called pethidine, if you've ever heard of it. It's basically morphine without the opium in it. And it's got different stuff in it instead because she was deathly allergic to morphine. It nearly killed her once. My mum would literally come out of hospital and her brothers would be calling her. Like, she'd come out of hospital and her brothers she'd stop to see her brother on the way home. This brother, who's not visited her for 3 months in hospital, would stop to visit and he'd say to her, "Oh, you're cooking. I'm throwing a party this Saturday, you're cooking. I need some rice and peas and chicken. I need some curry goat. I need some samosas, you're cooking." After she'd just come out of hospital after 3 months. That was the culture. Like, she was expected that she would do that. We would go to family parties and it was expected that when the food was brought out, every girl in the family, including me, from 7 years old upwards, would get up from a seat, stop the conversation she was having, dead if she was having a conversation. She would stand up, she would go to the table where the food was, and she'd start plating up food and carrying paper plates to everyone in the house or everyone in the pub or wherever they were. And that was expected. And God help you if you didn't do it. God fucking help you if you didn't do it. I tried to argue against it once. Do you know what I got for my trouble? Trigger warning, folks. I got a belting and I got sent to one of the bedrooms for the rest of the night. In front of everyone, I got a belting. And that was because that was what was expected. And it was shameful if you didn't do it, and you were embarrassing your parents, and you were rude, and you were this, that, and the other. And that's the cultural baggage that this woman carries. She carries the baggage of, you will cook, you will clean, you will be a good wife, you will be, you will not get an education. You don't need to read books, you need to cook dal. And if you don't, you'll get a belting. Because that's all a man wants from a woman. And that's what she's carrying, that trauma and passing on to her daughters. And she's doing her best to break out of that trauma. Like you see in the comments where she says, I'm cooking it. Am I asking you to cook it? Or, she wants to teach them how to do it, but she doesn't force them to do it. But you even see at the engagement party, Jazz is made. You stand up, you hand out the food. Notice how not a single man in any of those family party scenes got off his fat ass to pick up a plate of his own accord. The women had to bring it to him. That's normal.
When Joe comes, to visit the first time,
Jazz gets up to make the tea.
Yeah.
And bring him a cup of tea. That's expected. I'd be at home. People would visit my parents. My parents would call me from my bedroom where I was doing my homework to come down and make them a cup of tea. And it was expected I would do it. It was just that's the culture. Yeah. That's how it is.
It sounds like Andrew Tate's wet fucking dream, this, by the way.
Yeah, it does. It's Andrew Tate's wet fucking dream. Where do you think he got the ideas from? Like, you can tell from my tone, I don't approve of it and I didn't appreciate it. Some people are okay with it. I'm not. And you know, I have my judgments on it. But if it was, like, for me, feminism is about the choice, right? If you want to be a mother and a cook and a stay-at-home housewife, and that's your choice, good on you, darling. I will fight all day long for your right to do it.
Absolutely.
You want to be a career woman with whatever you want to do, I will fight for your right to do it.
As long as it's a choice and you're not pressured.
Yes. And this is the thing, like the pressure, the family pressure. The family pressure of that, like that comes across in this movie a lot. Like, you never get the impression her parents are going to do anything physical to her. You never get that impression. But there is that pressure there, and you can tell she's spent her life being brainwashed into certain ideas of what isn't and isn't appropriate. And she doesn't want to be there.
She's definitely not like physically abused, but there is an element of emotional abuse there in that, you know, you guilt them or you tell them that they're not going to measure up. No one's going to want them.
She goes out for the day with her friend, and the first thing her mother does is accuse her of smoking when she comes home. So she's got an excuse to yell at her. Her mother doesn't care whether she was smoking or not. Her mother doesn't smell smoke. Her mother just wants an excuse to yell and scream at her because she wasn't at home to help cook dinner. That's what that scene's about. Unless you're Indian or you come from a culture like that, you don't get that. You miss that bit.
It's not a physical, like I said, not a physical abuse, but a shaming culture. Yes. Yeah, it's culture shaming you.
She should not be 18 years old and ashamed to wear a pair of shorts. I don't care how badly scarred her leg is. That's not her fault. That's a scar. She should not be ashamed of that. And yet the first thing her mother says is, you showing the world your scar. Shameful.
If she had just said legs, it would have, like, but the fact that she went for the scars, like that fucking
but this is
sucks.
The thing. The scar is a marker. My mum was scarred to hell and back. My mum got burned as a child. My mum was scarred to hell and back and wouldn't uncover. Like, my mum used to wear thick T-shirts to go swimming because she was covered in all scars here. Yeah, and people used to stare, and it was horrible, the things people said to her. But the thing is, the way the mother uses the scars against the daughter, you have to understand. The daughter got the scars because she was trying to cook at home when her mother was out at work. The shame is not on the daughter for having the scar. The mother feels guilty that she wasn't there and she's forcing it on the child. That's what's going on in that little subplot. Yeah. I wasn't here to cook for you. You tried to cook for yourself. You got burnt. I feel guilty. Therefore, I'm going to make you ashamed to show anyone the evidence that I wasn't there for you. That's what is going on in that dynamic between them two. I've seen that dynamic. I've seen the way my mother's family used to shame her for her scars. She was the youngest of 6, and yet she managed to be the one who got burned. Like, where were the rest of them?
But anyways, back to the father. His character arc isn't about overcoming the bitterness against people who are racist towards him. It's about overcoming the
fear that they'll be racist towards his daughter.
Well, overcoming the hurt that he had and realizing it's better to fight against it than it is to hide.
It's better to stand up and be counted than to sit down and let them walk all over you.
Yeah.
And this is what he's doing. Like, this is him, like that final scene where he says, you know, she's good and she should do it. That's him saying, that's his blessing for his daughter. Not to get married or go be a solicitor, but take the fight to them and I'm with you. That's what his blessing is there.
It's very much giving Miss Marvel vibes. Like, the I really enjoyed Miss Marvel, and like
So did
I
I.
hadn't watched Bend It Like Beckham before, but watching it, I'm pulling in like the dynamics of Miss Marvel, and I can't help but compare them in my mind as we're watching the film, and I'm
Same.
like, holy crap! Only one was Pakistani and the other was Indian, but same
And
basic
also the
themes
other
of
is,
accepting
the
family.
other is post 9/11 living in America.
Yes. I mean, so there's obvious differences, but the core element of the family where it's like they have disagreements with the daughter's trying to like find her own path in life, and the family wants to kind of, keep her in line with like their traditions, but then there's an acceptance at the end. So like those broad strokes of just the storyline pertaining to her interactions with her family, I loved it.
Yeah.
There's something this movie does incredibly well that quote unquote white people movies doesn't do, because it's unique to minority cultures like Indian culture. I've seen it in black culture as well. I've even seen it in some Polish culture. It's when the daughter stands up and has her big shining speech moment of "I'm gonna do it" and "fuck you," basically. The mother doesn't fall in line and doesn't fall straight away until the father says something. Like you can be a minority teenager telling your parents, "I'm gonna do this." Like your parents aren't gonna fall in line. Your parents aren't gonna suddenly turn supportive of you. Life ain't a fucking fairy tale. That's not how that goes down. And it's very rare you see in films. Like the only reason the mother turned supportive is because the father was supportive. And like even then, the mother did it through grit. But the thing is, the mother even did it through gritted teeth. The mother turns to the father and says, "You see what you've done, letting her play football. Now she's ready to run off to America." She said, "At least I taught her how to cook full Indian dinner." Like the mother's not doing it because she supports her daughter. The mother's doing it because she knows she's lost against her husband.
Yeah.
Like and that's a dynamic you don't see that in movies where the teenager grows up and the parents accept them and then cheer them winning the race or whatever the hell at the end. Like, because that's a white narrative. That's not a minority immigrant story narrative. Because the culture goes deeper than that and can't just be changed by one good speech. Speaking of culture, do we want to talk about Tony? But he's Indian. I still, to this day, like, but you're Indian. Again, another one for my family is still short out, but you're Indian?
Yeah.
I actually, while we were watching the movie, made the comment of this is why women love their gay besties, because like he was supportive of her, like he was going to go to the mat for her. He was proposing a lavender wedding for her just so that she could be happy,
so she could follow her dream.
I half expected the movie to end with her being his beard, or his beard, so she can go off and play football.
Yeah, like that's the only way that actually happens in reality. Let's be clear, that's the only way that happens in reality. But like Rick will tell you, and we've got our own stories. My family, like, holy shit, some of the comments my family have passed over the years about me marrying a white person. I'm the only one of my cousins who's married to a white person. Obviously, I'm an only child, so I don't have siblings, but I'm the only one of my cousins who's married to a white person. I'll tell you the story, and again, content warning for what I'm about to say. When my mother's the youngest of 6 brothers and sisters, right? And I'm near the younger end of the cousins. Like there were several cousins before me. The first lot of cousins are born to my uncle. Grandfather says nothing. My other uncle has 2 kids, boy and a girl. Grandfather says nothing. I come along, right? My mother, now don't forget my father's white. And my uncles were with white women, but white women's a totally different kettle of fish. There's a lot of complexity there. But, they didn't fundamentally change who they were as people to marry these white women. They very much targeted white women who were not necessarily neither of them are still with them. Let's put it that way. And both of them have probably got the scars to prove it, you know. And when my uncles took my tradition, like I'm sure every culture has it, right? When you have a child, you take it and show your parents, don't you? You say, look what I made, kind of thing. You introduce it, right? When I was born, my mum went to the family house where the grandparents still lived, and the uncles were there, and, you know, their wives were there and their kids, and put me in my grandfather's arms. And my grandfather went into his pocket. The story goes, this is 1993, yeah? My grandfather went into his pocket and took out £100. In 1993, that's a lot of fucking money. That's a lot of money. That's about $250 modern money. That's a lot of fucking money, right? And they were not rich people by any stretch. Took out the £100 and handed it to my mother. And my uncles piped up, oi, where was ours when our kids were born? Do you know what my grandfather came out with? I know this one's mine. It came out of my own daughter's pussy. I can't prove it about the other ones.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, my grandfather was by no means an idealized person. He was a wanker of the first order. But
to be fair,
this is what the girls are for.
Yeah.
To be
fair, the story I shared a couple of weeks ago on there had worse sexist language than that, so I shouldn't really have reacted that way.
The reason I share that is because A, it's indicative of the sexism in the culture, but B, it's also indicative of the racism, because the reason my grandfather couldn't be sure that my cousins were his grandkids is because they had white mothers. And you can take whatever implication you want from that and run with it, because it's probably right. And that's the, you know, this is why I'm saying that's the trauma the mother's carrying, and the idea that she has to marry Tony in order to go live her life. The fact that she was not willing to go against her family, even when she knew what they were doing to her was wrong. The idea that, you know, she didn't argue with her mother when her mother said, you're going to learn to cook. You're going to wash the neck curtains. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. She didn't argue, because she knew she wasn't just arguing with her mother if she did that. She was arguing with 1,000, 2,000 years of tradition and culture and the baked-in sexism and cultural issues. Now, please, anything I say about my family, don't take that as indicative of all Indian people. It's not. My family are a bunch of... Just don't get me started. But some of the things they do are very telling. And my family twists the Indian culture that way to control the girls. But if your culture can be twisted in that way to control the girls, there's probably something wrong with the culture. Yeah, so I'm not saying the culture is the cause of my experiences, but without the culture, that doesn't happen.
And there is, you know, something to be said about the conflict of retaining everything of the home culture, even the toxic stuff, and or just completely assimilating.
Yeah, and that's presented as a zero-sum game, right? Like you see you see it in British politics and conversations about Muslims in Britain. They say, you know, if they want to live under Sharia law, why don't they go back to Saudi Arabia? Well, they don't want to live under Sharia law. They just want to hold their own religion. So they came to a country that supposedly prides itself on religious freedom until you get here. You know, like, it's this thing, like, everyone just like, when I come to America, there will be things that I will look at and I will go, well, it's not for me. And there will be things I look at and I go, yep, I'm all in for that.
Well, you see, when we're talking about religious freedom, we're actually talking about Christianity, specifically Protestantism, but we'll let the Catholics in if they behave.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
We'll let the Catholics in as long
rules
as they
for
don't
me
take
and not
offense at
for
the fact
me.
that we're celebrating.
Well,
Yeah, like
anyway, thanks for your
but a national holiday. Yeah, but no, it's all but a national holiday in Britain that we celebrate hanging a bunch of Catholics. Yeah, the country of religious toleration.
Anyway, there, Ring. I was about to say thanks for your contribution there, Professor Peterson.
But like, this is the thing. This movie really, that's what I like about this movie. You can watch it, and it's so British, right? It's British in its bones, in its blood. It's British, and yet it's Indian as well.
It is the epitome of a British comedy in a lot of ways.
It very much is, but it's British. It's Indian in a way that, for me, coming from the kind of fucked up family I came from, is very idealized. But again, I've got Indian friends who absolutely, like, that's their family all the way through. The fathers are lovely. The mothers are lovely. The mother is very obsessed with making sure you know how to cook dal properly. You know how to cook dal, you'll never starve. You know, like, it's how it is. But it's a really important film because it doesn't shy away from the toxic aspects of both cultures.
Yeah.
Like the father teaching the mother the offside rule, talking about the fancy French mustard. Like, why does it matter that it's French? It's fucking mustard.
Yeah.
You know?
The sea salt.
Like, I'm not being funny, but that scene there, right, that to me tells me immediately that family is middle class. Because you think there's a working class kitchen in this country that's got sea salt and fancy French mustard on it.
Specifically,
like,
he said
posh
French mustard. He called it posh, not just fancy.
Posh French mustard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they are so middle class. And
yeah, they are very much your sort of petty bourgeoisie for kind of family there. Definitely.
Which brings me to a comment I've been wanting to make, that like almost the entirety of the stream, where the mothers, the father, the families are mirrors to each other. But and the mother, is Jess's mother is objecting to the soccer because it's westernizing.
It's not ladylike.
Yeah.
No, because it's not ladylike. And it's not, as the mother puts it, what kind of family wants a daughter-in-law who can run around kicking football all day but can't make
Sorry, can I just respond to something in the chat very quickly? Yes, I am here. The reason I have my camera off is the room I'm in is a hot box right now.
And he's Starkers.
I'm not quite that fat, but let's put it this way. I don't think you want to see me with my shirt off, and I don't think anyone on the panel wants to see me with my shirt off. So that's why I'm staying on my avatar. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but like, this is the thing, right? That with, like, the Indian mother says you'd have to know how to cook aloo gobi and make ranch chapati, and the white mother says no boy wants a girlfriend who's got bigger muscles than him. They're saying the same thing. They're just saying it in a different way.
Well, and
I'm gonna say that woman does not know a lot about male sexual fantasy.
And then of course we have her, Jess's Jess's mom's third act meltdown when she thinks that playing that Jules' mom's third act meltdown, where she thinks that Jules playing soccer turned her into a lesbian.
Yeah, and like in 2002, before we understood that that's not how sexuality worked. I mean, as a girl who
There are
played
people
football,
now that don't understand that's not how sexuality works.
Yeah, but no, the comments were definitely passed when I was like 9 and 10 years old. Don't you think she's getting a bit big for football now? She's turning into a woman now. Don't you think she should stop doing stuff like that? And it's like, why? Well, we don't want to run around on a football pitch with a bunch of sweaty women, do we? Because like, it's two-pronged, right? When you talk about girls in sports, it's two-pronged. On the one hand, there's the fear that it'll turn her into a lesbian. Which, I mean, look, a lot of things may or may not have contributed to making me bisexual. This movie definitely helped.
Fucking Keira Knightley. Whew, boy.
Those football players and that girl and that cut. Oh my, yeah, that helped. But also, like, there's an element of slut shaming, which happens in this movie that the mother takes part. Like, you know, you running around half naked, bare-legged. There's an element of slut shaming there.
Yeah.
Like, why is it okay for boys to run around bare-legged and half naked playing football, but it's not okay for girls? Like, what are you telling girls about their bodies? And that's very much... So it's two-pronged when you're a girl. Like, if you were a tomboy as a girl, you were going to be a lesbian. Like,
I'm not going to say this. I lost count of how many times the word slag was used in this movie.
Slag, shagger.
Yeah.
Like, where I'm from, that, like, you know, you describe, you know, a lad's a shagger, but a girl's a slag.
However, I'm going to say something. I haven't watched this movie in a long time. And you said that about this movie contributed towards your bisexuality. God damn it! I gave Joe consideration in this movie. I am heterosexual. Okay, I have zero interest in men. I gave Joe consideration there.
So what we're saying is, you started out as a 6 on the Kinsey scale, and now you're a 5.2 on the Kinsey scale.
Damn it! You're converting me, you people.
I mean, I don't know.
You're turning me.
Maybe this is just my chaotic bisexual energy, but I find it very hard to believe that anybody is completely one or the other. Like, I believe that it is very much a spectrum, and you can have like a preference for your clothes, but I don't know. I find it hard to believe that there isn't one person for everybody that could get them to flip that switch.
Let's be honest here. Scummer believed that he could be exactly at one end of the spectrum until he rewatched this movie this morning. That's what he's saying here.
See, this just validates my chaotic brain rot, like my bisexual brain rot here, that, you know, I don't think that sexuality is quite as cut and dry as we like to believe it is. But again, like, as a bisexual, I find, you know, that I am attracted to all gender representations. Like, so, like, I again, maybe it's just my brain bias in the way that I look at the world, but it's like, literally, I would love to be in like a polycule with the 3 J's, you know. I'm just saying, like, just put me in the middle of them, please, because those girls would know how to get it done. I would definitely call Keira Knightley mommy.
Look,
so you wanted to be in the center of the J Trinity.
Yes. Sign me up for that.
Ring, darling, I love you. You know I love you to death. If Jonathan Rhys-Meyers ever knocks on my door, I'm going to need a free pass.
we all have our free passes. Like, he's on my list. Keira Knightley's on my list. You know, I didn't know about the other actress that played Jess, but whew, damn, is she attractive?
Oh, fucking hell, yeah. She scrubbed up well as well, didn't she, at that nightclub? Fuck.
She's aged well too. Like, she's fucking 10 years older than me, and she's still fucking hot.
Yeah, but like like, it's one of those things, right? I have a type. I like them tall. I like them reasonably skinny. I like them with nice soulful eyes, and I like them with dark hair unless they've dyed and grown it. So, you know, I have a type. But I have
My
a type.
type is more eclectic.
I have a type. Look, Mr. Darcy, Mr. Thornton, and Ev, and Ring. You know, I have a type. But in men, I have a type. In women, not so much. But Jess is more my type than Jules. But yeah, like, but this is the thing about this movie. What I really liked about this movie, they could have, like, this movie was making the point of you shouldn't sexualize girls playing sport.
Yeah.
But then this movie did something that I'm not sure even a 2023 movie would be able to pull off. It walked the walk. Like, did you see a single shot in this? There's one shot in this entire movie where the person in the shot is sexualized. And that's the shot where the camera starts at Jessie's feet and works up when she's wearing that leather skirt. But that's deliberate. Like, that's what that's for. Because it's showing her off, because then you see Joe check her out, look her up and down and check her out. But other than that, this movie doesn't sexualize these girls. Like, okay, you see them changing in the changing rooms, you see them playing, but there's never any long lingering shots on them or anything. Like, this movie walks the walk, and, you know, it's saying don't sexualize girls playing football, and it means it.
And it, you know, and it juxtaposes that with the shots of, you know, the lads, you know, like, you know, getting all sweaty in the park and, you know, taking off their shirts.
Yeah. Like, the men of the eye candy, like, you could tell it was directed by a straight woman, right?
Yeah.
Like, the men of the eye candy of this movie. Which, you know, was a nice change in 2022.
So
still is, to an extent.
Question: if there could have been someone different to play to play Joe, who would you say?
There's only one other person I would want to play Joe, but the problem is he's not Irish, so he wouldn't have been able to pull off the...
I was thinking James McAvoy.
But he's Scottish. He could probably pull it off.
He could probably pull off the Irish, I think.
I probably would have wanted him to. I think it's important that the actor was Irish as well as the character.
I mean, I've seen,
like, if you're going to make a statement about racial discrimination, you need to back it up in your casting.
I've maybe seen a couple of Scottish actors pull off Irish characters brilliantly, but rarely. I mean, yeah, the one I always think of is Sean Connery in The Untouchables, plays an Irish American.
But young David Tennant might have pulled this off if they said he was Scottish. Like, to be fair, you could put a Scottish character there and have him say, "I'm Scottish, of course, I understand," and it probably would have flown to a British audience, but it wouldn't have translated outside of Britain, and that's the problem, right? But on looks alone, David Tennant could have pulled it off. James McAvoy for certain. Like, it would have been a completely different vibe. But you know what? You could have probably put someone like Christopher Eccleston in that scene and have him say to us something like, "Jess, I'm Northern, of course I understand."
Yeah.
Like, you could have gotten away with that if it was a solely British movie. But it wouldn't have translated outside of the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
So Mage says, never saw a guy who did it for me, and that includes looking at homoerotic material to see if it would do anything for me. I would still put myself at a 0.5 on the Kinsey scale.
Well,
I want to...
Mage, the fact that you're taking a look, just saying.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Just saying.
Like...
I mean, like, you know, Connery is the only actor who can play a Russian submarine captain and an Egyptian posing as a Spaniard with the same Scottish accent.
Yeah, but because
But,
he's
like-
got like that big dick energy, like that, it's just like fuck it, I'm gonna be
This
me.
is who we're talking about, folks.
Moon. And he's
Why did I
still
just put
hot
that
even
fan?
20 years later.
Like, this is what we're talking about. And it's for me, it's the open collar. Like, anyone in an open collar, just, yeah.
You just
I'm
want
gonna
to take your tongue and
I'm going to say any actor capable of turning Henry VIII into a sex symbol has got to be pretty damn hot, you know.
true.
Yeah.
Like I will channel my inner Vosh for this. True.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the actor we're all talking about, folks, that we're all swooning over.
Jonathan
and
Rhys Meyers.
look at
for
this
people who
person.
don't know, yeah.
Like, what I would like you to do, folks, is to look at this person on the screen, then look in the top corner where Ring's sat. Do you see what I mean by I have a type? Do you see what I mean? Like, I have a type. In AMAB, folks, I have a type. Yeah, he was one of my first crushes.
You've got Ring blushing. They're blushing. It's so cute. You just want to pinch their cheeks.
So, anyways,
I feel like we need to
anything,
see Ring's full screen.
Moving on.
anything else we want to say about the movie?
I love you.
Yeah,
Ring,
plenty, but I want to watch you
couldn't-
blush first because it's hilarious.
Poor Ring.
Ring's as red as Lucifer, my emotional support demon. Like, it's super adorable too. Like Toby.
Ring is Tobbins. So what was that about that fence swing you were having, Ring? What was that about? I can't make you blush on a fence swing.
So, to be fair, it's femme question mark.
And to be fair, like we are tag teaming them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but try me. But yeah,
this might actually go back to Native Atheist point. It might be unfair that I'm off screen right now.
Maybe a little bit, but only.
But
so
I tend to go red faced because I drink during streams anyway. So
yeah.
So
I want to take the entire theme of your parents don't always know what's best for you, Jess. I want to talk about what your parents don't know what hurt them, Jess.
Yeah.
I'll cover for you. And the great line of my sister's covering for me. We're supposed to be staying with my cousins in Croydon.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Like I swoon. Like he's so swoon worthy because he is trying to help her like stand on her own feet and find herself because ultimately when you go through this world, yes, you can have family and they may or may not support your choices, but ultimately the responsibility falls on you.
Like, that's what he's telling her. Like, there's a great line in this movie where he says, my father's a bastard. And she says, you shouldn't talk about your dad like that. And the line he returns at her with, you don't know my old man. Like, this film is very, like, give Plugged In their due. They are right. This film doesn't exactly encourage its audience to be obedient to their parents, does it?
But it also doesn't encourage them to say fuck you either, considering, like, Tony proposed essentially a lavender engagement, and she immediately said, nope, he's lying. And she came clean. Like, so that was her standing on her own, but still trying to respect her family by at least saying, look, I'm going to tell you what I want and not just go with what you want, but I respect you enough to be honest with you and not go on with like this charade.
Yeah.
But again, I say this with love, Kitty. You saying that, I'm going to say this with love. Please don't think I'm having a dig or it's not a racial thing. Well, it kind of is. It's a very right perspective to have. Like the idea of at least I love you enough to be honest with you. My mother would have happily lived believing that I wanted to go off and be some lawyer and have 2.5 kids. Like, my mother both wanted me to lie to her and also wanted me to be honest with her. There's a very again, there's a push and pull there. There's a, like, my parents, I came out to my parents as bisexual at 16. And the first reaction was, why did you tell us this? You shouldn't have told us this. We didn't need to know. We didn't want to know. It's, But then the reaction later on was also, oh, so all your mates knew before we did. And it's like, yeah, my mates knew before you did, because my mates don't mean anything to me as much, because I've only just met them. I've only been at college 3 months. You're my parents. Like, my friends were the test in the water for coming out to you. And my parents took offense at that, but also took offense at the fact that I told them at all. And there's because when I tell my parents, what that does is, until my parents are told, they have plausible deniability. They can still, in the terms of this film, until her parents know, they can still go to the temple. They can still say she's going to go off and be a solicitor. They can still say she's going to marry Tony eventually, and they can all see it coming. And they have that plausible deniability that absolves them of the shame of having a daughter who's not traditional. And so there is this push and shove of, I want to be honest with you. I don't want to put you in the position where you have to defend my choices. And that's what Jess is battling in this. Like, she doesn't, the fact that the reason she wants to be obedient to her parents, yes, she wants to obey them, but there is this sense of, for as long as her parents are against her, and as long as her parents are trying to push her into that traditional lifestyle, they have the plausible deniability. That means they can still go to the temple with their head held high. They can still walk down the street with their head held high. They won't be the subject of gossip because their daughter is obedient and their daughter is doing what they said.
Yeah.
And there is that. It's a cultural thing. But look, we all know about how women gossip. Yeah, mothers at the school gates. We've all seen it, like the gossips, and that happens in every culture, right?
Yeah, that transcends culture.
That transcends culture, but everyone talks about, her daughter ran off with some white boy with blue hair, or she ran off to wearing short skirts, and the blame is placed with the parents. The line in this movie is, children are a map of their parents. And she's trying to protect her parents from that. As well,
and,
as...
that community is, like, tight-knit, where you had Tony calling her father uncle, even though there's no blood relation there.
Yeah, it's an honorific. It's everyone's uncle.
I'm going to have to jet here in a minute, but I wanted to remind you, because I just thought of it at the wedding, or like the pre-wedding party or whatever, the guy that was dancing, and you said that, oh, he might be her cousin. I'll talk about it on stream. So I wanted to bring that up to remind you.
It is
I remember seeing that.
And again, it feeds into this whole thing of the girls have got to be a certain way and slut shaming and everything else, and have got to be the way they are. There is no fucking way her father allows anyone who isn't family to grab hold of her like that at a family event. No fucking way. Do you know what happens to a man who grabs hold of her who's not family at a family event? He gets taken out back and he gets 7 bells kicked out of him. That's what happens. But because he's family, he's her uncle or her cousin, he can get away with it. Even when it's obviously sexual with the way he looks at her and behaves. And even though it's obvious she's uncomfortable. And notice how she's uncomfortable. But she sneaks away from him and she doesn't make a scene.
Yeah.
Because she's been raised that family men must be obeyed at all costs. I genuinely, some of my happiest memories are being 6, 7, 8 years old at family parties in the middle of the living room, me and my girl cousin, dancing to the Indian music like they do in the scenes in this movie. And as we're dancing around the room, our own uncles and fathers and cousins would take out paper money and put it down our shirts and trousers as we were dancing. And that's normal in the culture. That is totally normal, and we are not taught to view that as a sexual thing. But how can it not be? How can it not be? Like, we're not taught, like, we're taught that that's fine. Like, I used to bump and grind and dance like the Jamaican bump and grind with my dad. I've got video of me at my 16th, 18th, and 21st birthdays of me dancing with my dad in a way that I danced the way my mother taught me, the way I watched my mother dance with my dad. Because my dad was the only safe man who wouldn't put his hands on me like that and would protect me, and I could dance like that. And that's the culture we're taught in. But what that also does, it blinds us to the danger other men pose to us within the family. Like, it blinds us to the dangers that our uncles are not our fathers, because we're taught to treat them with the same level of respect. And we're taught to dance with them and to have that same level of comfort with them. That's why I say that man was family. Because there's no fucking way her father would have stood there and allowed any man who wasn't family to grab hold of her like that. It wouldn't have happened. Her uncles wouldn't have stood for it either. So he's clearly a member of family, which makes the way when she walks away from him and like with the vague gesture as if she's going to get food to serve, because that's the only way you get away from men in that situation, right? And he goes like this with his shirt. That's why that's so gross. But if you're raised in Indian culture from a young age as a young girl who's been dancing and had money thrown at you by your uncles from 5 years old, how do you know any different? How do you know it's wrong? She doesn't know it's wrong. And you can tell she doesn't know it's wrong because she doesn't say anything to anyone about it. And no one bats an eye at it. That is a problem. Like, that is a serious problem in the culture. And I'm not saying that, that it's always a problem. Like, do I think my uncles were paedophiles throwing money at me? No, I just think they were encouraging their niece to learn to dance and have fun. But also, like, you can see where that might have led in a different situation.
Yeah.
And it's that plausible deniability again, right? It's the plausible deniability of this is our culture, this is what we're like. Okay, but what you're like is leaving you wide open to predators. It's just like Christian culture says you trust your priest, you trust your pastor. And we've seen how that's gone. You know?
Yeah, that one hasn't worked out too good.
And it's one of those things. And, we're taught, as young girls in the Indian culture, my aunties would regularly, if I went somewhere to change, would just walk into the room without a word. Not so much as a buy your leave. I'd be in the bathroom taking a shower, and my aunties would just walk in because they wanted to brush the teeth or they needed the toilet. And if I said anything, God help me. You can see how that might lead to something further on down the line.
Yeah.
In my case, it did. Obviously, it doesn't for everyone, but it was justified but that's our culture. That's how they are. That's what they're used to. Whether it's the culture or not, no child, teenager, young adult should be in a situation where they don't feel safe enough to say to their parents, I don't appreciate the way that person is all over me. I want it to stop. She was not in a safe situation where she could say that. And that's very telling in that scene. And again, do I think it's the culture? Yes. Do I think it's solely the culture? No. But it's a very telling moment in that scene. And again, it's the kind of scene that only someone who was actually raised in that culture could possibly understand and could possibly even think to write. Because it's so ingrained. And, I love a lot about the Indian culture I was raised on the edges of and everything else. But that, like the way the men, like, because literally the minute, on my 16th birthday, Let me tell you, my 16th birthday, there were men, Jamaican and Indian men, talking to my parents about how, she's 16 now and there's plenty to hold and she's got nice childbearing hips. Please, that is a direct quote. On my 16th birthday, you've got nice childbearing hips, I'm going to help you put them to use. That's what that culture can potentially lead to when you're in a twisted situation with twisted people like I was. Do I think this movie is going that? No, that's not what I'm saying. Do I think Indian culture in general does that? Absolutely not. But as with all things, what's innocent in one moment can very quickly become someone's worst memory, someone's trauma, and can very quickly be twisted, especially when there are malicious actors involved. So it's one of those things of, the culture of go kiss your aunties and uncles goodbye, or go hug your aunties and uncles goodbye. And I hear white people say this as well, and they force the kids to do it when the kids don't want to do it. Please don't. If you force your child at 3 and 4 years old to go kiss their auntie and uncle goodbye or their grandparents goodbye, don't be surprised when they don't come to you at 17 and 18 and tell you they've been raped. Because that's where that leads. Did you intend that when they were 3 or 4 years? Absolutely not. Was there any malice involved? No. But that's where that leads. And it's a really important point that we trust the wrong people. Like, that man was clearly her uncle or her cousin. He might have been in-laws, like he might have been one of Teet's family, but very unlikely, because all hell would have broken loose. And the fact that he didn't, this is... It's such an important blink and you miss it moment. But it's very, very telling. About not just Indian culture, but British culture, white culture, all cultures. You have to teach your young people about their own bodily autonomy. You have to teach them to set those boundaries themselves. Otherwise, like, what if she hadn't managed to sneak away there? How does that scene end? With the way he was behaving.
Yep.
That scene ends with him going in to kiss her and her pulling back. All hell breaking loose in the room. But then she's the one who gets the blame because she was rude. That's how that scene ends. If she didn't get away. And again, that's what this film does very well. Like, you see it with Jules. When Jules is with her parents, and the way her mother and father are very casually touchy-feely with her. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm absolutely not saying there's anything wrong with that. But there's a difference with Jules is, and you see sometimes when Jules approaches Joe in the movie, like, she'll walk up to Stan and he'll be very, because he knows she's got a crush on him and he knows she's out of bounds.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
And the film is very good at
he just sort of half turns away from her.
The film is very good at communicating to the audience, like, the difference between a support and a romantic touch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also very good at communicating the difference between friendly banter and toxic banter. Like, you get the girls in the changing room talking to the other lass of, you slag this, that, and the other. That's friendly. They're all laughing. They're in on the joke. When she's in the park and the boys are talking about, a burn on a leg, like, oh, what's that? Oh, I ain't ever seen a burn before. Or, when they're talking about, oh, get your girlfriend, there's a bite to it.
Yeah.
And that's why we cheer for her when she brings him down, right? When she hits him with the ball in the bollocks and scores a goal past him. That's why we're cheering for him in that moment, because we know he's toxic and we know he's vicious.
Yeah.
Whereas her other friends are not, even though the words they say are very similar.
Yeah.
Well, like the way those lads behaved during the football match itself.
Yeah.
You know.
But again, you see those lads behave that way at that football match. But when Pinky's mates were watching the boys in the park,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing.
It's the
But
same
when
thing.
the girls
Maybe.
do it, it's laugh. It's and
Yeah.
that's again. This director is very good at pointing out double standards in cultures. She does it really, really well.
Well, it's clever in a way because, like, you know, I was laughing at what they were saying when they were sat on the bench. I was laughing my ass off, and then you watch the same sort of similar thing later on, and it's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, you know.
That's what this movie, like, this movie's not just holding a mirror up to Indian culture and British culture and saying you are the same. It's holding a mirror up to the audience and saying, see yourself.
Yeah.
It's telling the audience, have a think, check yourself, have a think about what you're doing. And it does that really, really well.
And I think it's like I'm gonna have to reference my tagline right here, because the purpose of a good storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but it's to give you questions to think on, and too often we forget that.
Yeah, and it's this thing, right? I don't care whether you're black, white, Indian, Jamaican, I don't care. Yeah. Your 18-year-old daughter comes home and tells you she's going off to America, to the other side of the world. And also she's dating a boy you've never met who's also at least 3 years older than her. You're going to struggle with that shit. You're going to be worried about her. You're going to freak. Of course you are. What the difference between, good parents and bad parents in that moment is, are you going to sit down and listen to her? Are you going to let her get her side of the story out? Are you going to hear her out? Are you going to support her? Or are you going to become another problem in her life?
Yeah.
Like, are you with her or against her? Is what this question asks the parents.
Yeah. She says it's a women's team, but now there's this Joe. See how she lies to us.
That line. Oh my God, I had Vietnam flashbacks at that line. Because this is the thing, right? When you've got strict parents, and I'm sure Ring knows about having strict parents. I don't know if Scummer does.
Not really to the same extent.
You can be as honest as you can be. But if your strict parents decide they want to have a go, they will find a reason to have a go. Like, have you been smoking? No, we went into a pub and I had a Coke.
That's parents in general. They don't have to be too strict to do that.
Even the father but did you see the line the father delivered afterwards? He said, "Let me smell." And then he said, "She might be right."
Yeah.
He didn't dare stand up to his wife on his daughter's defense, even though he will have known the difference.
And and also that is a big part of his his secondary character arc is learning to support his daughter, and
and learning to not put his wife in her place, but learning to, like, he's the henpecked husband archetype, right? He's Arthur Weasley. He's Mr. Bennet. He's the henpecked husband. He's Richard from
Keeping Up Appearances.
Yeah. He's he's to an extent he's Boise, to an extent and that trope is very, very common in British media. The henpecked husband.
Yeah.
With the idea that the husband who lets his wife walk all over him is emasculated in some way. But what he has to learn is, like, because clearly what you see is, right, you see this man here who is rebelling against everything his culture stands for.
Yeah.
His culture says man should rule the family with an iron fist. His culture says, man is the breadwinner. His culture says daughters will be obedient and will grow into good wives, and, all of that.
Yeah.
And yet throughout this movie, at every stage, he says, no, my daughters will have a better life than I had. My daughters will have a better life than their mother had.
And it's not exactly that he's henpecked. It's
he's allowing his wife the freedom she would never have had with any other man.
And also, his wife is a lot more conservative, and she's swinging with the force of, 1,000 years of tradition.
Yes, because his wife is a woman who has never had the opportunity and never had the chance to be anything but that. She says to Jess, at your age, I was married. Jess is 18 in this film. Jess is 18 in this film. Her mother was married at 18. Her mother never wore makeup before she got married. Her mother cares about teaching her to cook, clean, and iron, and wash net curtains.
Yeah.
Her mother has never had the opportunities that the father had. Like, it's there in the father talks about going to the East Africa Cup. He's traveled, he's seen a bit of the world.
Yeah.
When he was a boy in Nairobi, but he speaks with an Indian accent, so clearly, like, he's traveled, he's seen a bit, and he's realized that the culture he comes from in India is not necessarily the culture he wants for his daughters. So he brought his family to England. He brought his wife to England and built a life here. And there's that push and shove between the parents. So she represents the old world and the old traditions, and whereas he represents the force that is pushing them into that progressive mindset.
Yeah.
But he also likes to keep one foot in that traditional livelihood of, he raises his daughters to respect the religion, to follow the same religion, to hold the religious figures in high esteem, to respect their elders, because there's an understanding there of, you respect me and I'll look after you.
Yeah. He's working on integrating.
Yes, he's trying to integrate his family, whereas his wife is looking at it and, like, his wife would have been happy anywhere.
Yeah.
But she followed him because she's his wife. Whereas he, like, you get an Indian man who played cricket in the East Africa Cup and did very well, like he was the best fast bowler, like he had a very good life. And yet he comes to England and he works at Heathrow.
Yeah.
Like, it's stereotypical. Like, to translate that joke for Americans, that's like the Russian astrophysicist moving to America and being a janitor. That's that joke. Yeah. That's what that joke is saying, except it's not a joke, it's a reality. And that joke is based on realities. Of the Polish chemist or whatever coming over and being a cleaner. Like, that's what that joke is. If Marie Curie had emigrated to America, she'd have made a fantastic housemaid. Like, that's what that comment is saying. And he's brought his, because he's looking for that better life for his daughters. He's looking for that more progressive mindset. Because that's what Britain sells itself as on the world stage. Right? Britain sells itself around the world as the land of plenty and the land of equality and the land of progress. Until you get here.
Yeah, and he got there thinking he could continue on in the progressive, UK, and was kicked in the nuts by reality, and he didn't want his daughter to feel that same pain.
And the racism and everything else. Yeah. And this is the thing about the father. Like, the father is very much, he's trying for his daughters. He's trying to give them a better life. But again, there's this thing, look, if you go knocking on the door and it gets slammed in your face, you of course you're gonna go, well, fuck you too, and go home. If you can't do that physically, you're gonna do it emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah.
Like these like talking about my grandfather and the comment my grandfather passed that I mentioned earlier. Do you think he was like that when he first came to England with all that hope about getting a good job and everything else? Do you think that's what he thought of white people when he got on the boat to England? Because why the fuck would you get on the boat to England if that was your mentality?
Yeah.
England made him that way. And, you know, as bad as that comment was, and I'm not justifying or excusing it in any way, shape, or form, I can understand where it came from.
Yep. So, final thoughts.
Final thoughts on this movie. Look, this movie is... It's an Indian Cinderella story, okay? Look, this is not how it goes in real life.
Yeah.
But it's a great movie. And for what it does show of the culture and the mix of culture and the tension of trying to be a non-white second or third generation immigrant in the UK, it's a very, very good representation. It's a very, very good representation of how immigrant communities pick up sometimes the worst toxic traits of the community they go to in an attempt to assimilate. Because it's trying to feed into, like, her sister throwing around anti-LGBT slurs, anti-lesbian slurs. Her sister didn't learn that in India. Her sister didn't learn that from her Indian aunties, did she? Because her Indian aunties thought she was a Pisces. Her sister didn't learn that word from Indian culture. She learned it from white
She's not
culture.
Lebanese.
Yeah. She didn't learn that slur that the sister throws around a casual conversation. You know, she uses the D slur for those who missed it.
Yeah.
Totally, like, she learned that from white people. How did she learn that from white people?
Also interesting that Focus on the Family didn't point out using the D slur in any of the negative, you know, in the in the crude language or in the negative elements.
Yeah. But it's one of those is that
Well, Ring, you just can't call Germans Jerry's. I'm sorry.
There's like this word that Indians in the movie use. Gora it's an Indian word. It means white person. That's all it means. Yeah. It's just the word for it. But I'm honestly like, and again, we used to say that. Like, I still remember my cousin saying to me, you know, one day you're going to bring home a Gora and break your mother's heart. But yeah, that I bring home an Indian person and break me on. Yeah, like I remember my cousin saying that to me when I was about 12 years old. She's like, you know, you're going to bring home a Gora. You're too white. You're going to bring home a Gora. It's like, yeah, at least I'm not going to. And do you know what my response actively was? Like, my cousin's about 5 years older than me. And at the time, she was with a Jamaican lad. Lovely lad, right? Absolutely loved him. But this is the kind of culture I grew up in. My immediate response to her was, well, at least I didn't bring home a black man and break my father's heart. Because her father hated her boyfriend at the time. Yeah. It wasn't about him being black or Jamaican. It was me having a dig because she'd had a dig at me.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that was about. And obviously, I've grown up since then, and I wouldn't ever say something like that now. But I say that as an example of when you're in an immigrant culture, you are in this very weird position of not belonging to either, but having to put up with the worst of both. And it's really, really irritating. And it makes your experience very difficult to share. Like, it's some of the stuff I've said on this stream, right? If you took that out of context, like, I'd be cancelled, like, in 3 seconds flat. And even in this film, like the sister did not give a damn about the idea of going with a white boy.
You do realise now you said that someone's going to clip all the shit you've said in this and
At this point, fucking let them. If people don't understand context, they can go fucking do one. You know, but it's one of those things of the sister would not have cared. The family would not have cared that she was a lesbian. But it was the first thing they used to attack her when they're angry at her.
Yeah.
Like the sister wouldn't have cared, but she used it to attack her. And like Jessie's progressiveness is very, very progressive. Like when her friend tells her he's gay and her response is, "Oh, it's okay with me." Like the fact that in 2000 you still had to clarify that. Like she says to him, "It's okay, Tony," and then she says, "Well, it's okay with me," because in 2002. Being an Indian and being gay in Britain, that was not okay.
No.
You know, that was not okay. And it was almost patronizing that she would say that to him. It was not okay. The LGBT spaces in Britain are still very white.
Like, Mage, that
Bradford
wasn't
Pride
an
was
invitation.
this weekend.
Sorry.
Like, Bradford
that
Pride
wasn't
was
an
this
invitation.
You've never seen more white people in Bradford.
And Mage, if you do want to clip something at about a minute an hour 40-ish minutes in, I give a demonstration to Ben fucking Shapiro about how you actually discuss and review a movie's score choices.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, right, I say all these things on stream. I know we're a safe space here and people wouldn't do that to me here. But the thing is, right, I don't care even if they did, because this is my truth. I share my truths on these stream and I tell you my stories. And I'm not telling you these stories to brag or to glorify or to justify anything. I'm telling you these stories so you understand. I'm telling you these stories so you appreciate that not everyone is born into a progressive, middle-class, woke environment.
Yeah.
And that, you know, it takes work to get to the point where you are comfortable with. Like, I was 12 years old when I found out someone my family knew was a lesbian. And for the best part of a month, I wouldn't go near her. Until someone said to me, you know, it's all right? You know, she hasn't got AIDS. I was 12 years old.
Mm.
And I was so homophobic that a woman who the month before I'd been calling auntie, I wouldn't go near her. Because that was the culture I was raised in.
Yeah.
And now look at me. Now look at me.
Yeah.
People change, people grow. But it's important that you understand where people are coming from. Because if you don't understand where people are coming from, you can't understand how far they've come. And it's a really important message. And that's what this film does really well. Like, you have to understand where the father's coming from in order to understand what it took for him to stand up and defend his daughter. And that took all of his bravery. Like, you have to understand where the mother's coming from to understand why she's so frightened that her daughter's not going to get married. You have to understand where Joe's coming from to understand why he's the way he is. Even Jules and her parents, you have to understand where they're coming from. If you don't understand the culture of white middle England, you don't understand why that mother is so scared of her daughter being a lesbian. And if you don't understand that, she just comes across as a bigot. But she's not. She's afraid and she's ignorant. And that is nothing wrong with being those things. It's staying those things that's the problem.
Yeah. Funny enough, because I actually had this conversation on another stream yesterday. Which is something that was sort of a different topic. But I was on a stream with someone yesterday, and we were kind of talking about about that whole thing about when do you cut someone off or whatever for having different views or whatever. And yeah, my thing has kind of been, look, people. I mean, look, people know I've made fuck ups. I've been ignorant on stuff like Noodle. One of the reasons Noodles kind of kept me around. They know I've been ignorant on stuff, but at times, but not willfully so. And of like, oh, okay,
you try.
yeah,
But
and it's like,
you try,
okay,
and this is the thing, right? You try, like, if you say something and I don't like it because it's a little bit too racist for me, or it's a little bit too not quite LGBT affirming, and I say to you quietly, say, Scummer, I know you didn't mean it that way.
Think about what you just said there, and
think about what you just said. You do think about what you just said, and you do see the problem, and you do something about it. That's the difference. And that you do exactly what the characters in this movie do. They look at it and they say, actually, no, that's not right. And they do something about it. That's why these characters are sympathetic in this movie. That's why this movie stands up. Even in 2023, when we are well past being scared that your daughter's going to be hounded for being a lesbian like George Michael was. You know,
but
we are still.
Like, for example, for me, like, the cut-off point for me is when just someone is continually being willfully ignorant and has been around enough people who've told them otherwise to know fucking better.
Yeah.
And are still not now. Won't mention the person's name, but you guys know there's someone that I used to get along with that I've decided not to associate with anymore for precisely that reason, because there's someone who has been around long enough to know better, and
for me, right? It's
yeah.
Once is innocence or ignorance.
2
is a slip up with an apology. 3 times is deliberate malice.
Yeah.
If I have to tell you the same thing 3 times and you're not changing that behavior after 3 times, it's because you don't want to. And if you don't want to, that means that you value what that behavior represents to you more than you value the humanity of other people in some cases.
Yeah.
Therefore,
like I said,
that's my line.
And I understand it if you don't get it, if at first you don't get it, it might take you a while to get it, but definitely when there's been cases of when people who know by now should know better.
Look,
and are continuing to
I'm at the point, I'm pushing 30, right? I know I can't keep up with the quote-unquote alphabet mafia and all of our pronouns and all of our this, that, and the other. I'm just queer and that's who I am. Take it or leave it, right? But if I've got some 19-year-old come to me and saying I've got these pronouns and I've never heard them before, or I'm this gender and I've never heard of it before, it's not my job to understand that shit. It's not my job to know the ins and outs of what that means to them. It's my job to say, okay, your pronouns are, and then, look, I'm really sorry if I forget. If I forget, let me know. Yeah. It's my job to be kind. I do not have to understand. I just have to accept. Because I'm not in their skin. I'm not in their head. I don't know what's going through their head. And there's no harm and no fault in being kind. Like, what's the worst accepting someone's pronouns is going to do? Convince them that you're a safe person who they can turn to and talk to? I can live with that. I can't live with being the person, the final nail in the coffin for some kid who comes to me and says, my pronouns are such and such, and I say, fuck it, I want fucking kids, this, that, and the other, and that kid goes and jumps off a bridge the following day. I can't live with that.
No, I understand that. Look,
that's where I stand. I don't have to understand.
You guys know that sometimes I fuck up on pronouns still. But that's not something deliberate. I've always not. I've been aware
about it, and you apologize.
And I've been aware that that's something I need to work on within myself, of trying to get into get out. Oh, I've got this is a bad habit here that I need to try and break with. That doesn't happen overnight. It is because it's it's a habit you have to try and get into.
The downside of all of our social interaction being over text.
Yeah.
But also, like you see in this movie, the mother. What's your name, Jess? Jess, is that Indian? Like, because she's clearly looking at this girl and she's going, "Well, your name's clearly not Jessica, is it?" Like that's what she's thinking. But she's tactful and she says, "Is that Indian?" To give Jess that opening to say, "It's Jasminda, but only it's Jasminda. That's very pretty." That's her way of saying, "I like that. It's nice. I don't quite know what else to say." And then when she calls round again later, Jasminda, is it? And she tries. And when she's
I had a curry.
She says, yes,
I had a curry last week.
Yeah, like the mother is she's clumsy, right? She's clumsy. I made a curry last week and it was lovely. She's clumsy, but she means well. She does mean well. Like she's not blatantly racist. She's not racist. She's a white person who's never dealt with Indian people before. And she thinks that what they have in common is curry, funny sounding names, and she's heard that Indian people teach their daughters to be obedient. So that's what she goes with. She goes with things that she thinks are safe for Jess. She's trying to create an environment for Jess that's safe, but in doing so, she's done the opposite because it's so clumsily done. But that doesn't mean we should hold that against her. She's trying. And trying is everything. And I think we do get into this habit in this culture of we cancel people for the slightest thing. Right? We cancel people for fucking up on a pronoun once or not understanding something. Like, no, give people credit for trying. Let people grow.
Yeah.
Like, you've heard all the things I've said on this stream, right? Can you imagine if people had have just decided when I was 18, 19 and first finding my way in the LGBT community, if people had have known what I was like at 12 years old and what culture I came from, if they'd have just washed their hands of me. But they didn't. They were kind. They listened to me. They gave me a space to ask questions. I try and do the same now. Like I've got friends who are Muslim who don't understand certain things about being LGBT, and they come to me and ask me those questions, and I answer them. I do the best I can.
I mean, heck, in 2012, I was with Noodle, and I voted for Romney.
Yeah. Can you imagine if I'd have washed my hands of Ring at that point? Like, you've got to give people space to grow. And that to me is the... If you're going to take a message that you really should still have 20 years after this movie came out, it's that. Give people space to grow. Let people integrate on their own time. And let people make their own mistakes. Because like the message of this movie is, as her parents, they've raised her, they've taught her to cook, clean, and iron. They've taught her to look after herself. All they can do now is take a step back and let her go live her life. And be there for her if she needs them. But trust that they've done enough that she can stand on her own 2 feet, and she will.
Yeah.
And that's both sides of that, right? That's Jules's family and Juliet's parents. That's both of them. They've all got to realize she's an adult now. She's 18. Your job's done. You can sit back and relax now. Your job's done. You've done your bit. All you have to do now is sit back and be there to answer the phone if she ever has a bad breakup with a boyfriend, so she's got someone to cry to. Like, that's your job from here on in. Go enjoy your retirement. You've done your bit.
Yeah.
And that's what this job is saying. That what this film is saying to parents is, you've done your bit. If you were a good parent, your child should get to 18 years old, and you should be confident that they can go out and live a life without you. That's the point of being a parent. The goal of parenthood is to make yourself unnecessary in your child's life.
Yeah.
Like, your child should have the option to choose to have you in their life, not be reliant on you long after they should have cut the apron strings. And for me, that this movie does that really well, because that's what the mother was doing. She was teaching her daughter all these things, but she was teaching her daughter to be reliant on her, right?
Yeah.
Teaching her daughter to be reliant on all those cultures. But then when she allows her daughter that little bit of freedom, she knows her daughter. Like, if you love something, let it go, right? They're letting their daughters go off to America. Do you think either set of parents has any worry that their daughter's not going to come home? She's not going to come see him sometimes, that she's not going to pick up the phone? No, because they know they're good parents and they know they raised her right. And they know they raised her to be able to cope and to live a life. Isn't that what all parents want in the end?
Mm.
And with that, I think
I'm
we'll
not a
move
parent,
on
but
to,
that's my tuppence worth.
and with that, I think we'll move on to shilling. Noodle?
Still have my questionnaire ongoing.
Link
if
is still in the
you know anyone,
doodly-doo.
thank you. If you know anyone who passed away from COVID during the lockdown times in the UK, please fill in the questionnaire and I will be in touch if we can go to interview.
And if
what
you
else
don't, please share out the link in case it reaches someone who does.
Yeah, and I've been listening to, again, you can tell I'm still on a John Green binge. I've been listening to his old podcast, The Anthropocene Review. Bring Kleenex, but do go listen to it. It's on all the major podcasting places. It's well worth a listen. He turned it into a book eventually, so you can just go get the book as well if you want. But well worth it.
And Scummer?
Well, I've got my channel. As always, please go and sub there. I to put out a video a day or two ago, actually, about more crap within with amongst atheist activists. But I am thinking of bringing back one of my old Twitter streams at some point, looking at idiots on Twitter, and because I feel like one of my because I'm feeling like one of my childhood heroes has actually worked his way up to it now. So yeah, Wild World of Twitter might be getting a Matt Letizia special pretty soon.
I'll have to read up on Matt Letizia. As much as I love this movie, I'm not a big football person and haven't been since I was about 13.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of craving like a good spicy taco.
I'll just say you were always fantastic on those streams, Ring.
Oh, thank you.
Because you always seem to be on Fem Swing when you cave in as well. You see, which means we get sassy Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ring is plenty sassy. You just have to bring it out of them.
Yeah.
But, you know, God, I'm craving an Indian now.
Yeah.
I say I'm craving an Indian. Like I'm not going to order a chicken tikka masala.
How many of us are going to go and get on the phone to our Indian takeaway after this stream?
To be fair, right, the food in this movie, I looked at it and I was hungry.
Yeah.
Like the food is on point in this movie.
So, and of course, next week it'll be media musings as usual. Though I'm pretty sure there will be Knives Out at some point or another.
I think we have the next few weeks set up on our card, which I don't know if the link's in the doobly-doo, but I'm sure Ring can put it in for us.
The link is, but it's not current according to the screen cap you sent the group.
Okay, yeah, I can go in and fix that. It'll be current before close of business today. Well, close of business tomorrow, seeing as today's not a business day.
Yeah. So, but yes, next week we are covering Knives Out, and then the week after that we will be covering Chirac.
Mm-hmm.
I will not comment on American pronunciations of the word Iraq.
Well, to be fair, it's
I know, but I'm British, so I had to.
To be fair, it's actually technically, since it's a play on Chicago, it should be Chirac. but
Yes, which is how we pronounce Iraq in English.
So, but I'm pretty sure that like Spike. Well, it's pronounced Chirac in the movie. So
Yeah, because the movie's made by Americans.
yeah. So, anyways, next week we will be revisiting what's
Knives
his
Out.
name? Yeah, we will
Daniel
we will
Craig.
be we will be revisiting Daniel Craig and making up for having to skip Knives Out by covering it next week. And then we're going to be closing off the season with a couple of Yorkshire films, which is kind of interesting, seeing as how one of them is one of the most famous Holocaust pictures of the 2000s.
Of course, that's how you would describe it.
And with that, we'll move on to taglines.
Am I up first? Am I?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to ask a question. I just want to make a statement. She's Indian, not Lebanese.
I thought she was a Pisces.
And Noodle.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a good storyteller is not to tell you what to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.